Ladies and gentlemen, diehards of all ages, welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'd like to wish each and every one of you a happy Monday. Happy Monday to everybody except Joe Pyfer. Hope you all are having a wonderful day today. Welcome back to the show. As you can see, we have the baby blues. We get the money chain necklace out this week. We're coming off a win. +1 unit. I don't care if it's a little win. Win is win. So we are now at, can you believe it? 3-1 in the last 4 weeks. We're on a bit of a little run here. Something that might become something of a comeback that could become a good season of MMA betting. So let's not get ahead of ourselves, but your boy's feeling good and excited because it's been a long time since I've had that much success in that short amount of time gambling on this damn sport. So yeah, it's a good Monday to be alive. How's everybody been in the chat? We got my guy Dream, the Grateful Dude, Dixon Cider, Ethan Hershey. What's going on? Demopoulos 7898. What up? What up? We've got Sever33 saying the Friday intro song should be this pod's intro too. Yeah, my guy Rusty would just kill me if I made him listen to that thing twice a week, but I'm with you. Playing for real, Air Dog, Corey Haskin. What's going on? Louis Mack Jr., Andy Paul. How's everybody doing? Welcome into the show. We are already jumping, you guys, and straight out of Mexico City, which ended up being a decent card, you know, a halfway decent little card. It had a little bit of everything. One thing I will say, I'm pretty proud of myself, pat on the back here. I didn't have a Link Memorial Dog of the Week last week. I was sitting here going, every week I've made myself pick a dog. And I've always been able to argue for why one of these dogs comes through. Well, the only two that came through were the short dogs that, frankly, I was ready to lay chalk against. So none of the dogs that I was like debating were even close. You know, all the underdogs got absolutely nuked on that card. So pretty proud of myself for not trying to force a dog in and you know, just bring shame to Link's name, right? No, we got to save that. So more often than not, I'm going to have a dog of the week for you. But unfortunately, this week, the dog of the week was going against one of my favorite bets on the card, and there were only like 2 of them that came through anyway. So we'll get the dogs going again. We'll get the dogs going. It was a classic 2024 type of card where just all the chalk rolls all the way downhill last week. This week, I am very excited because we are headed back to the Apex. We got that tiny rinky-dink little cage, but I have an OG guest on the show today, old-timey friend of ours, one of your guys' favorites, someone who we haven't had on the show in a long time, and frankly, it has been too long. It's my guy Luke from Sparring with Reality Betting. Luke, how you doing today, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, man. Yeah, it's been a while. Looking forward to chop it up again. I don't do many podcasts anymore, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, and I love the gloves in the background, man. You got a whole on collection going back there in the background. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've always been a big like memorabilia freak ever since I was a kid. You know, I'd go to like baseball games and get autographs. So thought I'd spruce up the background a little bit with some signed gloves.
I dig it, man. I like it. So those of you guys, if you're relatively new to the show, you might not know my guy Luke, but he was one of the first guys to come on the show back in the day. He OG member of the Club and Sub podcast, so he's been around pretty much forever, and really good to have him back to go ahead and talk about some of these fights and break things down here with you. Luke, out in Vegas still, right? Like full time these days.
Yes, sir. Going on about 3 years now.
There you go. So this man's living the dream and doing the damn thing. My guy Dixon Cider in the chat saying, Clint, will you be using Joe Pyfer's hairline doctor the day that we cash the turkey hairline transplant parlay. Yes, Dixon, I will be flying out to Turkey and I will be texting Joe Pyfer asking him for the name of his guy. So we will get that taken care of. But step number one, you got to hit the parlay first, right? Like, I'm putting together a nice little run of winning events here right now. You never know. You never know. Hey, we were this close to hitting a 50-1 with that round 3 submission on my guy Vince Morales this week. We're getting close, Dixon. We're getting close. Maybe we can hit the transplant parlay this week. We'll see if we can put one together. Luke, how'd you do? How'd you do at UFC Mexico City?
So I actually started out the card really strong and just kind of shit the bed down the stretch. So I went down like 1.4 units, I think, lost on Dober, lost on Urseg. I also, I guess, maybe tried to get a little too smart for my own good, but I had the over in the Vergara Chairez fight that obviously ended very, very quickly. I knew the first round was going to be a little hairy, but I thought if we got out of that, we were going to cruise over, but didn't get there. But I got in early on Jamal Emmers. I think he made that look relatively clean. There's a couple sketchy moments, but laid the wood on the Hubbard over. What else was the other one I hit? I don't remember. But yeah, either way, had a strong start to the card and kind of tanked down the end, but nothing crazy. Still a decent start to this year, up a little over 10 units. So.
Wow. Okay. All right. So, hey, being up is good at any point in time during the year, if you ask me, because I am not. My hangover from 2024 started pretty strong here to begin the year. So I'm still working my way out of the hole, man. So glad to hear you're up and positive. Fun card overall last week. I feel like I did some good stuff. Like, I kind of leaned towards Manuel Torrez, but Narco and I were talking about that fight like the morning of in one of his Twitter spaces. And I was just like, coin, I don't need to flip. Like, these guys are going to go out there and go life and death in the first 2 minutes of the fight. I don't know who's going to land. So I just decided to steer clear of that when it would have been pure luck that I was on the right side of the coin flip, but I didn't need to put my money there. Wanted to live bet CJ Vergara. He died instantly, so didn't get involved there at all. Saved a couple bucks. I wanted to bet Rolando Rodriguez. Dumbass didn't grapple, which, I mean, at the end of round 1, he hits a takedown, and you're like, okay, his corner, quite obviously, will like talk some sense into the kid and get him grappling coming out for round 2, right? No, he continues to flying knee and spinning heel kick and do all kinds of stupid shit, trying to catch Kevin with something big instead of using his very obvious advantage on the ground. So dodged a bullet there. Wanted to live bet Jose Medina if Atiba Gauthier, started fading a little bit. He got nuked early in round 1. So, I mean, for profiting 1 unit and being completely wrong about, well, okay, I need to rephrase that. Losing the C-Rod fight, I still managed to profit and dodged bullets, and the hairs on the back of my neck are doing well right now. You know what I mean? I'm kind of missing those bear traps. I do just want to say, I know you guys know, C-Rod's my guy. I'm a C-Rod apologist. No problems here. That fight went exactly the way I called it. C-Rod just didn't get his hand raised at the end of it. Like, we knew Costa was going to have a good first round. We knew Costa was going to slow down and tire out. We knew C-Rod would turn it up and dominate the third round. Honestly, Luke, it was that damn knee in round 2. Like, that's the whole fight came down to a single knee in round 2. Good job on Costa. That's the kind of thing. All you got to do is tip your cap. I feel like I read that fight perfectly. And if C-Rod just doesn't get nuked by one big knee that swings the momentum in the middle of the second round, he was dominating the first couple minutes of that round, doing a good job. That's the fight game, man. It is what it is. So happy to be able to say that and still have a +1 unit instead of being like down 4 or 5 or something after getting that one wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was Costa was actually a dog that I was looking at that I didn't end up pulling the trigger. There was a couple bets on the card that, hindsight, I had my finger on the button and I didn't do it. Like, I probably shouldn't have played Dober and the under was like relatively playable. Like, it was like, it's like, that's what I should have just played. Like, in the Gautier under 1.5 was plus money. I was looking at that. I'm like, well, I mean, if this guy is really minus 500, should the under be plus money? Probably not. And I didn't end
every bit minus 500 too. Dear
yeah.
God.
So
Are we sure Francis Ngannou didn't have like an illegitimate child or something? Because I'm getting shades, man. He's a freak.
Yeah, big boy.
Yeah, he's going to be something scary to watch out for moving forward. All right, that's enough waxing poetic on last week's card, man. I guess we can go ahead and dig into this one and get the ball rolling. First fight of the night, we're starting off strong, baby. Loma Lookboonmee takes on Istela Nunes. And I love me some Loma Lookboonmee. Like, I'm not even going to apologize, man. I love that chick. She is awesome. She always goes out there with a big old smile. She's got those big tree trunk thighs. Her Muay Thai is nasty. She's very heavy on her feet, plodding forward, hard leg kicks, just destroys the thighs and legs of everybody that steps into the cage with her. She's really, really fun. She's just 29 years old. She's on a 3-fight winning streak, and apparently she moved to Syndicate MMA, which I was surprised by. You know, she was out in Thailand and she was at not Bang Tao Muay Thai, I think. And she's been there her whole career. They brought her up from nothing. And then she decides suddenly to move out, and now she's training over at Syndicate. I'm not sure what spawned the move. Maybe it was just developing her game. Maybe it was just time for a change. Maybe she felt like living over on this side of the world. I don't know, but we'll see what ends up happening. You know, that you can't complain about fighters that get out of their comfort zone and go learn a new thing or two. We have seen some very improved wrestling and jiu-jitsu from her. That's something that it feels like it's been a focus the last couple of years. She got away from that in her last couple of fights, I want to feel like, because when you get an opponent that'll stand with you and strike, and you've got such an abusive edge in the striking, why bother do anything else? So I kind of can't blame her for not really going to that recently, but she definitely has had some success there. But the problem for me with Loma will always be that she's a natural atom weight. If a 105 division existed, like she might be the champion of it, man, but she is too small at 115 pounds. She's going to beat these mid to low level girls because she's just that good, but she will eventually get size bullied by somebody. We just got to figure out if it's this week or not. Istela Nunes, 6'5", 32 years old. She is really, really, really good for about 6 minutes. Like, Istela round 1 is a mythical creature, except she doesn't have the ability to finish in round 1 like some of these men do. So she will win round 1 on a lot of judges' scorecards, and then she just falls apart, man. She gets tired. You can get your game going on her. She's been rocked. She's been dropped. She gets taken down easily. Like, there's not a single thing that you can say good about her when the second round starts. She's 0-4 in the UFC. She's training out of ATT Brazil right now, and I love fading her. I love being on the other side of Istela Nunes. I don't know what you can do besides bet against her. I do feel bad for her in her last fight, though, because she was fighting Dudakova, and Dudakova came out and hit like an ankle pick style takedown, just dove on her feet. And when Istela hit the ground, we're talking damn near Anderson Silva leg break territory as far as grossness goes. She plants her hand and hyperextends her elbow. So she's like screeching, and the fight gets stopped via TKO immediately. And all Dudakova did was grab her heel. Like, it wasn't even like a real completed takedown. She got off balance. She landed weird. She broke her own elbow, and now she's back. I don't know why she's back at 0-4. I honestly thought the UFC probably would just kind of let her go even after that kind of an injury. We've seen them be kind of shitty like that, the fighters, before. But anyway, she will have a 3-inch height advantage and a 5-inch reach advantage. And I think that does set up to cause some problems for Loma Lookboonmee. Both these girls like to strike, and especially Istela Nunes, she's always on her bike. She's always going backwards. She's always going side to side. So you're really going to have one of these women deciding to come forward. And I'm not sure who is going to make that choice, because Loma likes to sit back and make you come to her, and then she'll beat the hell out of your leg as soon as you get into range. I've got a feeling we have a very low volume start to this fight, man. Loma's a -650 favorite, and I could see this fight playing out a lot closer than that line would suggest, just because nobody's doing much of anything. The hot take that I've got for this card, Luke, is that we see Loma show off some of her new skills. You know, training at a place like Syndicate MMA, I could see her getting the takedown going, especially with the way Istela Nunes tires out and gasses as these fights get deep, especially if Loma's not able to catch her, if she's constantly trying to run around and stay away from her. I could see her hitting a takedown. I'm going to go ahead and hot take this bad boy with a round 3 submission call to start the night. Realistically, it's probably going to be a Loma via decision and a gross, greasy ass, boring one at that. But if she starts grappling, Nunes will give up the back. And that's where Loma's actually really good. She's got a rear naked choke. And actually, I called the rear naked choke against Elise Reed a couple of fights ago. And I think she might go back to that here again. I don't see why not, but it's got to be Loma.
Yeah, I do think this line is kind of wide, to be honest with you, just because of the striking dynamic that you touched on. Like, Loma likes to primarily play the back foot. And I know while Nunes is 0-4 in the UFC, like Carnellosi just incessantly walked forward and threw strikes on her. Sam Hughes incessantly walked forward, threw strikes on her. Yasmin Yaraqui walked forward incessantly, threw strikes on her. It's like, that's not really how Loma fights. Like,
yeah.
So I don't think it's just as easy to say that like Loma's gonna like just easily dominate on the feet here. Like, both girls want a range kickboxing match, essentially. And to your point, it's kind of difficult to figure out who's going to play the bull, who's going to play the matador. But just based on Loma's striking style, like, that in theory is actually going to give more upside, I guess, historically than what we've seen from Nunes, coupled with the whole cardio thing that you mentioned. Like, all these girls are just going forward on her. Like, Loma doesn't really push a crazy striking pace. In fact, she lands less than one distance strike than the divisional average. So she hasn't been super high volume. So I can actually see this fight being pretty competitive on the feet. I think if Loma's covering, it's obviously coming with the grappling. But when going back and watching her tape too, if you look at a lot of the takedowns that Loma's landing, it's usually because girls are initiating clinching with her. Like, she has landed some takedowns in open space here and there, but usually her takedowns are more of a reaction to opponents getting close to her because she's obviously beating their legs up. It's like, but if Nunes isn't initiating those sequences, like, are we supremely confident that Loma's going to come out here and shoot 3 or 4 takedowns?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily sure about that. Like I said, I think that's definitely a path for her. Nunes is terrible on the ground, and obviously Loma's getting better, but she's definitely the better ground fighter here. So it's like, long story short, I'd be a little concerned with laying -600 on Loma if she's not grappling, coupled with the fact that she has not knocked anybody down in the UFC. So it's like, her shots definitely take an impact, but she's not like knocking girls out. So it's like, as crazy as it sounds, I mean, I think this is dog or pass at the price. Like, if these girls are going to kickbox for 15 minutes, Istela Nunes isn't plus 400 in that fight. Like, a lot of these fights for Loma, in fact, are like 29, 28 type of fights too. So it's just like, I mean, if she's not grappling and she's not finishing, I really don't think she's looking -600. So I think homegirl Nunes is getting a little bit of a bad rap this week based on the style dynamic. Because to your point, I think this fight could play out a lot more competitively than a lot of people think.
I agree. I agree with you, man. And I definitely can see the argument for taking a stab at the dog, because if Loma doesn't go to the grappling, if we do have that low paced, one pot shot, you go, I go type of striking matchup, the height and reach disadvantage. Like, if she can't get in there to touch Istela, she won't have those big moments where she's stealing the judge's eyes. We're going to be in the Apex, so there's no crowd to speak of anyway, but it's not like the crowd's going to be going nuts for her, landing a leg kick here and there. Nunes will be able to jab her. Nunes will be able to skate side to side and move around her. Like, if you want to say Nunes finally gets on track and wins a decision here, that number is probably pretty significant considering how big a dog she's going to be and how bad she's been in the UFC. I could understand that argument. I really could. It's a bit of a flyer type of situation. I don't have the conviction to do something like that in this spot. I really don't. So I'm going to be a chicken. I'm going to say Loma Lookboonmee, by decision. But like I said, I'm going to look at those round 3 sub type props when they come out, just based on the fact that she's training at a more Western gym at this point, and maybe we see advances in her grappling. And if that is the game plan, hey, I put a tweet out this past week, man, that gamblers would make the absolute best coaches for MMA. The problem is MMA fighters do not listen to us, and that's, going back to the lazy boy fight. If Buddy goes out there and shoots double legs, he wins that fight, no problem. But instead, he loses a decision. So I'm just taking a flyer here that maybe Loma will grapple this week. I don't have any information on that game plan. I don't have her coach's number to text him. So we'll see what ends up happening. What you guys should take from all of this, though, is don't parlay Loma to hell. Don't have a massive investment in Loma. I've been doing very, very well on these spreads. Actually, 2 of my winners this past week were the spread bets, the +3.5s at plus money, because you get these massive underdogs in close competitive fights, and judges frankly don't know what they're doing these days. So even a fight that, you won clearly, or if it's even close to a 29-28, you cover that +3.5. It's a good way to get around some of those issues and losing close fights, something, money line backers have been suffering in MMA a lot lately. And the second lesson you guys should take from any of this is that you should never, ever, ever have any significant investment on a women's MMA fight. And, on that note, we'll take you to my first bet of the evening. Next fight, Vanessa Demopoulos takes on Talita Alencar. And you should never, ever, ever have any significant investment on women's MMA, according to experts all around the world. And I've got a big bet here on this fight, Luke. You guys know we've got mixed emotions about Vanessa Demopoulos, right? Like, she came on the show that one time. That was awesome. Love her. Shout her out. Always good to cheer for her. She's a cool chick. She seems like a really nice lady. I bet on her a couple of times, and she has been gifted some very, very close decisions in some very questionable spots over the course of her career. But I think she gets a lot of unnecessary hate, man. She's a BJJ black belt. She's got a big, thick, strong, meaty build. She throws heavy. When she bites down on the mouthpiece and swings, she actually can crack. Her striking's come a long, long way. But the issue really for me is the submission or the takedown defense. She's got like a 27% takedown defense rating. She's never met a takedown that she didn't want to accept. She plays off of her back. She's more than willing to do that. And that's a bit of a problem here. Talita Alencar, 5-1-1. She's 2 years younger. And she's a 6-time world BJJ champion. So the grappling credentials for this girl, there's black belts and then there's black belts. Like, there's a big difference between these two ladies. Apparently, she took a trip out here to Arizona, spent some time at Fight Ready working with Henry Cejudo and some of the ladies like Lipsky and Cortez that are spending time out here. You look at her Instagram, and she's doing a lot of drilling with her wrestling. And Luke, that's always something I've always said, that if you take a high-level jiu-jitsu player, send them to Dagestan for 2 years and forget, call up a guy like Ben Askren, call up a guy like DC, like, teach me how to wrestle, bro. You'd have just an unstoppable force. Most of them decide not to do that, but it seems like that is the path that she is going. So I'm very excited about the future of Talita Alencar if she does get that grappling and wrestling combo really just fused together the way it needs to go. When we're talking about women's MMA fights, I probably shouldn't make this finger gesture on the screen. Man, I think Talita Alencar is going to lock up 2 rounds here. I think she's going to be able to hit the takedowns. I think she's going to be able to wrestle. Vanessa will play from her back. And then it just comes down to the judges. So I took -110, man. I got Talita Alencar, 3.3 units at -110. In hindsight, that is too big of a bet, Luke. It's too big. I should have done 1.1 to win 1, maybe 2.2 to win 2. But going 3 full, I mean, it's one of those ones where I got that kind of rose-tinted glasses of just like, I see the clearest path to victory here. I see the value, and of course it's going to happen. I clicked too big. So I will fully admit that right now, that if I have a losing week next week, you guys come back to this exact moment, because I'm sobering and it's dawning on me that I have too much money on Talita Alencar. But I do think she wins a decision in this fight. I do think she gets the takedowns on Vanessa. And I think Vanessa's decision luck, as far as these crazy bounces going her way, finally runs out on Saturday.
Yeah, dude, I'm with you. I originally didn't think I was going to have a cent of money on this fight, and I dug a little bit deeper into it, but I'm on Alencar as well. I think you kind of pretty much broke down the fight pretty well. I would favor Vanessa on the feet. She's obviously a massive punching bag, but she is consistent to throw. She's a tough girl, but Alencar's a chick that's going to sit there and shoot a ridiculous amount of takedowns. And you noted how bad Vanessa Demopoulos' takedown defense is. And quite frankly, I'd say maybe half of the time, she's not even trying to defend the takedowns. She's just pulling guard. Maybe that won't exactly be the case in this matchup against Alencar, just because she knows what's coming back her way. There might be a little bit more of a proactive nature to defend the takedowns. But even Jacqueline Amorim in the last fight, like, she's not a great wrestler either, and she kind of took her down without much issue early on. So yeah, I mean, if Alencar is going to project to shoot upwards of 10 takedowns here, even though I don't really actually think she needs to shoot that many, to be honest, but just from a macro sense, I would have to at least project 2 to 3 at minimum for Alencar. And Demopoulos just really has no get-up game. Like, she doesn't even want to stand up most of the time. And I think Alencar's guard passing is pretty good. She's not going to be someone that's going to sit in the guard. She's going to work to half. She can stay there. She'll go to mount, take the back. And we obviously know that the Demopoulos is not unsubbable now in the last fight. And quite frankly, against a girl that profiles very similar to Alencar, 2 green MMA fighters, not very good on the feet, but have credentialed jiu-jitsu backgrounds. And, that didn't exactly go very well for Vanessa. So I'm not passionate on Alencar necessarily, because there's obviously ways this fight could go massively wrong for her. But I don't also agree that this fight should be a raw coin flip. I think Alencar should be the favorite here. To your point, I like her to get her takedowns. I actually don't think she's going to submit Demopoulos personally. I do think it's live, but I'm more leaning that she banks 2 rounds, to your point, wins 29-28.
Yeah, man, I want to speak on that just a moment. So first and foremost, shout out my guy Dan from Half the Battle. Thank you very much, my friend. Secondly, we've got Adriana in the chat saying Vanessa losing in Vegas. And yeah, that's been a real thing, Adriana. My guy Liam Picks Fights has been the leader of never bet against a stripper in Vegas. Like, she seems to have some people wrapped around her finger when it comes to the judging in Vegas. And I placed the bet before I put 2 and 2 together. I know, obviously, I made the graphic that says UFC Vegas 105, but didn't even think about oh yeah, it's Vanessa in Vegas again, and that could potentially be a problem for me. So didn't really think about that. But yeah, I'm bucking that trend here, unfortunately, and that is terrifying to say that I'm going to even bother trying. She is also a BJJ black belt, and Luke, to your point, the only reason she has a submission loss on her record is due to the most blatant cheating we've ever seen in the UFC. I know I made a massive stink about this, you guys, but this is literally the moment that broke me as a soapbox gambler, right? I have always said that I want to win the right way. I would rather have the rules be the way they're supposed to be so I can guarantee future success than getting lucky once on any particular bet, right? So if a fighter cheats, deduct a point, take the position. I've always had that stance. Well, after I got a loss when I had Vanessa Demopoulos on the money line and Jacqueline Amorim, who we know is the most notorious gas bag in the entire division, when she did not get her round 1 sub, Vanessa was going to absolutely school her and beat her to a pulp for the remainder of that fight. I lost that night, though, because the UFC allowed Jacqueline Amorim to dig her fingers, and we're talking balls deep, into the glove of Vanessa Demopoulos. And it allowed her to keep Vanessa from reversing position and snag an armbar. I've actually got a tweet that's going semi-viral right now about that, because I brought it up on Twitter today because of happy Vanessa Demopoulos fight week. Yeah, but that was the moment that I went, okay, so the UFC has irrefutable video evidence that she cheated. You're not allowed to stick your hands inside the gloves, right? So they saw it on camera. They let it go. The referee saw it. Vanessa screamed at him. He knew that she was doing it. Didn't say a word. Let it go. They had an opportunity to review it after the fight was over, because we've got instant video replay. And they went, you know what? No, it's good. They had both Dom and Bisbing on the broadcast who listened, watched it, and were downplaying it as much as they possibly could. It was like I was watching politics, man. They were like, oh, but that happens all the time. It's just not that big a deal. We've never seen a more blatant foul in the UFC before, and they could not stop talking about how just not a big deal it was. We've never seen it since, Luke. We have not seen somebody cheat to that degree in the cage since. And they want to talk about how not a big deal it was. Guys, bet on cheaters. Bet the cheaters. There's no point not to. Guys will eye poke and get 6 warnings, and they will never have a point taken away. Guys will grab the fence. They will get their hand slapped 5 times. They will not put them on their back and take the position. They will not take a point away. There's no such thing as a point deduction in the UFC anymore. We've had, what, 1 in like the last 9 months? It just doesn't happen. Bet on cheaters. So, yeah. I'm over having the soapbox. I am over having the high ground, the morality. We're gambling. It's money. I'm going to bet on the cheaters. So there you have it. That's my opinion from now on. All right. Rant over. Let's move on to the next fight. Both of us on Amarine. Take it or leave it. We have got Victor Henry, and he's taking on Pedro Falco here in the next fight. Victor Henry, a guy that I've really not had a great read on, Luke. I'll be honest. I kind of thought he was a bum when he first got signed to the UFC, like way too old to be getting his UFC run going over here. And then he turned my opinion around quickly when turns out dude's pretty damn good. He's got a good frame for the weight class. He keeps high volume. He's very durable. I like everything about Victor Henry now that he's been here for a bit. But then we saw that he's got some flaws when it comes to his grappling potentially in the last couple fights. And now he's getting a little long in the tooth. Dude is 37 years old at this point. He pulled an Andre Fili level stunt in his last fight against Charles Jourdain. Now, Jourdain was dropping down to 135, so dealing with a bigger body, dealing with more strength and more power in that spot. Definitely not something he was necessarily ready for or used to, but hits a takedown, gets stuck in a guillotine. He did what Fili could not, defended the guillotine and got out of it, but then in the scramble while they were standing up, just did not expect Jourdain to go right back to it and lock up the exact same guillotine he just got out of and ends up getting tapped. Feel a little bit bad for him. And frankly, let's talk about how bad we can feel about Victor Henry. The poor guy got his balls demolished by Javid Basharat, and the doctor was blaming him for getting kicked in the dick and not stopping the fight. Again, going back to the cheating discussion, it took somebody else stepping in to go, yo, back up. This needs to be a no contest. They were about to TKO loss Victor Henry because someone else kicked him in the junk. So I feel bad for Victor Henry. But now he's taking on Pedro Falco, a guy who's 32 years old. He's 9-2 overall, 0-1 in the UFC off Dana White's Contender Series. This guy fought all the way back on Dana White's Contender Series in 2021, and they didn't sign him. He had an absolute barn burner of a fight. Dude went a full 15 minutes, and then deep in the 3rd round, he ends up getting the finish victory. It's like, bro, if he had fought on Dana White's Contender Series in 2025, he'd be the first guy getting a contract out of Dana White's mouth. Like this, he was back in the days before Dana lost his standards. Like they let everybody in now, especially if you get a finish. So this poor guy gets sent back to the regional scene back in the day, finally gets a call up on short notice to fill in, drops that fight, unfortunately for him. He trains out of Nova União. He's a very good, strong grappler, very good head position, likes to pin people up against the fence and kind of grind on them until he can get those takedowns. Good transitions to the back, excellent submissions. He's very opportunistic looking for those. He does end up kind of decisionating people if they're able to keep their submission defense going. He doesn't have a whole lot of other answers. So I can see why maybe they didn't sign him. He could be a little bit boring, and he does, classically, as these Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys tend to do, he'll take the back. He'll lay on his back. He'll play guard. So if you're a half-decent wrestler with good submission defense, you can beat this guy. Funny story, Luke. Looking through this guy's record, he has a decision loss to a guy named Joey Miola way back in like 20, what was it? Let me look. I got to pull his record up here. So Falco lost to Joey Miola back in 2015. And you guys don't know Joey Miola. Like 99.9% of you are not going to know who that is. I trained with that guy. We were blue belts at the exact same time. I was training at Power MMA and Fitness here in Phoenix when he was trying to become a professional MMA fighter. He was just barely getting the ball going. So I actually grappled at that point. And I got to tell you guys, if you've got a loss on your record to somebody who I personally rear naked choked, I don't think you're going to make it in the UFC. I am just not that good. So I don't care that it was 10 years ago that he lost to this guy. I am fully fading Pedro Falco because if you do some MMA math here, I should have a UFC roster spot. It's going to be Victor Henry for me, Luke. What about you here?
Yeah, to your point, I do actually like Falcao's jiu-jitsu, and he is pretty relentless with his wrestling, but he is kind of a one-trick pony in that sense. Like I don't think he offers much on the feet, but at least he's a guy that goes out there and tries to like maximize his equity, which I like in comparison to like someone like Vince Morales from last week, who just can never do enough to win any fights or whatever. So I do like the guy's actual process, but it's like actually assessing how good he is, I think is still kind of shaky because he actually hasn't fought that many times in recent years, like once in 2024 or once in 2023. And then you got to go back to 2021 in the first Contender Series fight. Then it's back on the Brazilian regionals, and there's not like a ton of tape out there on him as well. So I don't know. I don't have like the best like read on the guy, or at least as it translates to the UFC level. But what I will say is when Tony Gravely fought Henry, you know, and kind of an incessant wrestler or whatever, that fight was close, which is kind of interesting. Obviously, Tony Gravely's a much better wrestler than this guy, though. And I just think Victor Henry's volume, general experience is just going to be too much here. I do think he's probably going to get taken down a handful of times, and I wouldn't be surprised, especially if the early going of this fight is somewhat competitive. But I do think Henry kind of profiles to probably just pull away down the stretch, do more, and get it done on the cards. Maybe a late finish if the guy slows down, but Falcao's cardio does look to be pretty decent, at least from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. I think his cardio checks out. His durability checks out. Like everything should be fine here. So it sets up pretty cleanly as a Victor Henry decision spot. Now, if he gets taken down, absolutely, he could be in trouble. We've seen him get tapped more than once. So it's definitely possible that he could get submitted here. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Unfortunately, I kind of think the chalk rolls here in this spot. Victor Henry via decision probably should be right around that even money mark on that prop. And unless you're thinking he gets a vicious round 3 finish or something like that, that's probably the way that I would go. Not sure, pick your poison, right? Do you want to parlay him up at 2 to 1, or do you want to take that decision prop to try and bring that price down? I think those are the two most likely outcomes and maybe best ways to approach playing this one. Cade says Victor proved his takedown defense was decent against Gravely, and I agree with that. Victor going to break this guy in round 2. Okay, so Cade actually thinks he's going to go ahead and get the finish. So moneyline parlay for our boy Cade. Shout out Andrew. What's going on? Says Clint the GOAT. Appreciate you, Andrew. But appreciate you for the $2 donation here. You are awesome, my friend. Let's keep it moving here. Next up, Rhys McKee takes on Daniel Frunza. And yeah, man, Rhys McKee continuing the delightful Cage Warriors tradition of sucking in the UFC. Like this new wave of Cage Warriors champions, just complete cheeks. Rhys McKee is 29 years old, 13-6-1. And I got to tell you, I have been looking at this guy and being like, well, he's been on just an awful run here. It's his second stint in the UFC. But I rewatched the Chidi Nzechukwu fight, and I really was down on him for that fight. Mostly because I've always been down on Chidi. And Chidi has been doing nothing but prove me wrong recently, Luke. This is one that I've got to kind of recontextualize in my brain just a little bit, because I'm going, okay, Chidi sucks, and he beat Rhys, and Rhys has been losing, so Rhys sucks. And I got to kind of just pause that for 2 seconds, because Chidi actually has been really good recently in the UFC. There's a lot of people making good money on Chidi Nzechukwu, and it hasn't been me, because I've been betting against him instead of betting on him here. Rhys McKee does what Rhys McKee does, takes an absolute beating early on, and then turns the tides. He turns up so big as the fight goes deep. He just keeps on coming forward. The guy refuses to die, refuses to stop. He is very, very hard to finish. He has been knocked out twice, but it's crazy because at like the UFC level, he's not getting finished by people. It took Hamzat to get him out of there. Alex Morono, he went to war with. They had a bloody 15-minute battle. Ange Lusa had him on death's door within the first 3 minutes of that fight. And then he totally flipped the script. In round 3, Ange Lusa was literally CJ Vergara running for his life in that spot. Rhys is a guy that refuses to fuck off, and I love that about him. So he's long, He's lanky. Somehow, he's actually still pretty young. And then when he does get going, he is very, very dangerous. He kind of gets going a little too late in some of these spots. His opponent here, Daniel Frunze, is making his UFC debut off of, you guessed it, Dana White's Contender Series. He is 30 years old. This guy's an LFA veteran. He is 2-0 in LFA, both wins by finish. He took a really weird 2-year-long layoff before his Dana White's Contender Series fight, and he's very fast. He's very twitchy. He's got a snappy like body and head kick. His straight punches, especially early on in the fight, are just lightning quick. He does give up takedowns, though. This guy hurt his opponent on Dana White's Contender Series like immediately, had him rocked, and gave up the takedown going in for the kill. He gets a little over-aggressive looking for that finish and ended up on his back. Didn't have a single answer from there. Didn't know how to get back up, didn't know how to attack, didn't do anything, just kind of stayed on his back the entire rest of the time. He wants to stand right in front of you. I mean, almost pocket boxing, and just look to see who dies first. I don't know if that's a very good game plan against a guy like Rhys McKee, who's going to try to stick and move, who's willing to eat the fire and then turn it up on you. Both these guys have finishes, deeper in fights. So this one should be pretty exciting. I actually think this is going to be a bit of a banger. And I'm a little tempted on the dog. My brain is kind of slapping me because this is the kind of spot I got in trouble with last year in 2024 when the chalk just rolled over everybody, that I want to take the buy low spot on the UFC veteran guy. So is Rhys McKee really just that bad? Or is this the spot where maybe he proves he could be UFC caliber on his best night and he can upset the slight favorite Daniel Frunze, who's a minus 160 while making his UFC debut? Would love to hear your thoughts on this one, Luke.
I do think McKee is bad, but I think it all in his defense, it does need to be contextualized. I mean, the guys he's lost to, Hamzat, Morono, Lusa, Nzechukwu, pretty established talents at this point, where he's now getting, I think, somebody that's probably more on par, I guess, with him. I did watch a lot of Frunze's tape, even years back, just because I was not familiar with him or his game at all. And I do think the guy's made some pretty big improvements over the years from the earlier days of his career. I think his hand speed's gotten a lot better. He seems to be a little bit more processed in terms of his striking. I think he's a little bit cleaner. I guess the guy's also down in Florida at Killcliff now, so he's obviously at a good camp, good coaches, good bodies to be working with down there and getting out of Europe where he was in before. To your point, though, I mean, the guy still has some pretty clear deficiencies on the ground. I think his takedown defense has gotten a bit better. He still has a really bad tendency to give the back, though, and I think that's kind of one of my bigger concerns in this fight. Not that Rhys McKee is Jordan Burroughs or Gordon Ryan or anything like that, but he has found his way into dominant grappling positions at points, especially when he, kind of starts to cook later in the fights. He can find his way into positions. I think he's only got like 3 subs or whatever. So once again, not like a massive submission guy, but I've just seen a lot of things with Frunze that still lead me to believe he is very green as a grappler. And that's something that maybe even a guy who's not excellent on the ground in McKee, who I do think is better, though, could potentially capitalize on. I do think Frunze is the cleaner guy. I just think there's a really big speed difference. McKee just doesn't move his head at all. So I think part of what it comes down to is, can Rhys McKee more or less Homer Simpson his way into the fight? Just because I think he's, even if he's taking the shots, and he's throwing back, I think he's going to be eating, the more eye-catching shots. I think he's going to be getting hit more. So, but if he can take everything coming back his way, maybe Frunze slows down, he turns the tides. I think there is some equity and scope for him in this fight 100%. So I'm really not confident because I'm still not really 100% sure of what to make of Frunze in current form. But like I said at the start, this is a definite step down from the guys that McKee has been losing to, which I think needs to be said. So I doubt I'm going to have any money on this fight, though.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Yeah, for me, it's a dog or pass spot betting wise, and it's almost a damn near mandatory Rhys McKee round 3 just because he's so good in round 3. It hasn't really materialized into a finish in the UFC, but I feel like it's just a matter of time before it finally does. It is a fair take, though, for the people in the chat saying that the LFA is better than Cage Warriors. Our guy Dream saying that it's just an auto fade on the Cage Warriors. And frankly, that's been printing. Like they just flew everybody out over there to parade the Cage Warriors out there just to get their asses whooped and then come home with their tail between their legs. So I don't blame you at all for taking that approach here in this spot. I think it's a good live bet spot, though. See what the game plan is from McKee. See if he does take another life-changing beating or see if his opponent starts to get tired. This is a very easy spot, I think, to click if he gets beat up in round 1 and then starts to turn up and his opponent looks like he's slowing down going into round 2 or round 3. I kind of like the upset here for Rhys McKee, but I'm not sure I like it quite enough to bet it. We'll see when those props come out. That's probably the only way I'm really approaching it. But we'll kind of play this one by ear as it gets a little bit closer. Next up, we have some more women's MMA for you guys. Get excited. Dione Barbosa takes on Diana Belbita. And this is a lamb to slaughter situation, I feel like, Luke. I really do. Dione Barbosa looks like she is your nasty, mean, classic Brazilian monster prospect. 32 years old, 1-1 in the UFC. She lost her last fight via Miranda Mavericking. Like every single person in the world who doesn't have just stellar takedown defense is going to get Mavericked in that fight. She decided to play jiu-jitsu. She's very good off the ground. And so because of that, when Miranda goes to wrestle, she was willing to go to her back. And that's all she wrote. Against other people, though, she may not be quite so helpless on her back. And I think she's very, very good jiu-jitsu wise. Big, tall, athletic, very well built. She flows very nicely on the feet. Nice gliding kind of in and out movement, good range control, good body kicks. She's a black belt. I really like Dione Barbosa. I like her a lot. Belbita on the other side of this thing, 15-9, just 28 years old. Crazy that she is that young, but she is 2-5 in the UFC. Job has got to be on the line for this one, Luke. She absolutely is back against the wall here. She has a really awkward looking frame. She gets in there. She's so tall. She's so lanky. She keeps like a high boxing shell, and she's got a really nice long jab. But everything else comes from like real weird and awkward angles because she's got to like loop her arms around. Because seriously, dude, she's like knuckle dragging how long her arms are. It's insane. Really awkward hooks and uppercuts. And she's just not overly effective with it. She's mean. And I like that about her. She wants to get in there and hurt people and do damage, but she's also a death by 1,000 cuts type of fighter. She doesn't have significant power, so she can't really hurt the people that she's trying to get in there and do damage to. She's going to be 1 inch taller. Diana will have a 2-inch reach advantage, but she has 5 losses. Luke, 5 losses by submission. 4 of those are by armbar. And it's because once you get that arm extended, you can't possibly get it back. She doesn't have the muscle to pull that long pogo stick back to her body. She is just there for the taking. So I will call the specific Dione Barbosa via armbar. Once the market opens on BetMGM, they're going to have the armbar at -250 in this spot because everyone's going to just be smashing it. The sub prop will be -150 and the armbar will be -120. That's how likely this thing is ending by armbar. So Dione Barbosa by submission, that's the move.
Yeah, dude, I was pretty bummed. Like yesterday, I was looking at the early numbers on the total. The under 2.5 was like +165. I'm like, please, God, keep that. And it got absolutely nuked. And the under, it's now a pick 'em, and I'm like, son of a bitch. They actually opened the under 2.5. I think at like +240. I'm like, that would have like that is just insane. So it's just been one-way traffic towards the under, which is it's annoying because I was really hoping that was going to stay around. Because I was going to have a decent sized bet on that, but I think it's kind of correcting probably more to where it should be right now. But yeah, I mean, Barbosa is obviously going to have a pretty sizable grappling advantage in this fight. The most likely outcome is that, if assuming she is the price, she probably takes Belbita down and subs her. I don't really have a hot take there. What I will say in just a slight semi-contrarian sense that Barbosa did not look good in the back half of the Carrasqueta fight. She slowed down significantly. So in whatever world that, Barbosa is not able to get takedowns here, or she can't submit Belbita and she starts to slow down, like I mean, Belbita like lands like 8 distance strikes a minute. Like she just walks forward and chucks. So it's like she's not the type of fighter you want to slow down against, though, because she'll put it on people. Like she nearly killed Hannah Goldie in that fight. In fact, she actually almost got submitted late after she got taken down.
I miss Hannah Goldie.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, I was someone that had a -200 ticket on Barbosa against Karascate, and I was shitting my pants when they were reading that decision. And so it's just these, traditional grappler types at heavy juice, if their game doesn't work, things can start to go wrong. So I do think the price is kind of crazy just under that pretense. I think Barbosa is going to finish her early, but that's like, if I'm going to bet something, like I'm betting finish round 1, round 2. I'm not laying -600 on someone who's shown dodgy cardio and doesn't throw a ton of strikes on the feet against some demon from fucking Romania that's going to throw like 20 distance strikes a minute. And the last thing I'll say, in a little bit of the defense of Belbita, she's going back up to 125 here for the first time since 2020. Like she was saying, like she was eating like 400 calories a day to make 115. Like she was killing herself to make 115 as like a massive straw weight. So I don't think it's necessarily going to, that part's going to improve her grappling on Saturday. But all I'm saying is, I think she'll probably at least be in a bit better form of not having to kill herself to make one. Cause she's not undersized at flyweight either. She was just huge at straw weight, but I think Barbosa gets the job done, but like -600, no, thank you.
Honestly, man, I can't see it making that big of a difference because she's just so damn skinny. Like that's really all it comes down to for me, is that she is so skinny. She's taking on a monster. Like she's taking on a woman whose physique I aspire to. That's what she's facing in there on Saturday. I don't think moving up in weight is going to be any good for Diana Belbita here. And I understand what you're saying. The -700 is definitely a questionable number, just kind of like we were talking about with our girl Loma Lookboonmee. However, in this case, I justified because I fully expect her to just rinse her on the mat. I think she's going to take her down, and whether she wants to get a dominant position and pound her through the canvas floor, or she wants to take home an arm like everybody else decides to, I just think it's going to be an inside the distance type of fight. All right, guys. Real quick, shout out the chat. We've got over 370 live viewers. I don't know why I said 370. That's a weird number to brag about, but we've got almost 400 of you live in here. You guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, share the show if you haven't already. Would be greatly appreciated. We're talking UFC Vegas 105. I'm joined by my guy Luke from Sparring with Reality Betting. And the next fight we're going to talk about is Dangerous Davey Grant taking on Wily Cat Daniel Santos in what absolutely has to be the favorite for fight of the night. Luke, this is going to be a banger. This is an absolute banger. Every single Davey Grant fight is a banger. Davey Grant is my favorite mangy, greasy old dog. And what's my guy got to do to get some respect around here, Luke? Really? He's 39 years old. I get it. He's getting up there. He's a little older. He's 3-3 in his last 6. That doesn't look great on paper, but 2 of those losses were by split decisions to extremely respectable competition. He had a split loss to Daniel Marcos, which I thought he won, which is aging incredibly right about now. This guy is tougher than a $2 steak. It is not a Davey Grant fight until he tastes his own blood. He comes forward, he wings big power hooks, he rolls well with strikes, so even if you think you're going to get him, he lands power on you instead. He likes to get into a brawl. He's got underrated kicks. He's worked real hard on his submission game. He choked out Rafael Assunção with an incredible come from behind triangle deep in that fight in round 3. I will never, ever, ever forget that moment because I was literally at a zoo and I should have been paying attention to my family, but instead I was sweating a Davey Grant moneyline ticket. And when he pulled that comeback after I had very specifically on this podcast said that there is no world in which he wins by submission, yeah, that was a good time. I was losing my shit. Thankfully, I was on the money line instead of having too much investment on like the inside the distance or anything like that, because I couldn't have been more wrong about that submission upside. I love Davey Grant. I absolutely love Dangerous Davey Grant. He's taller, man. He's going to be 1 inch taller. He's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. The concern I have with Davey is that Rafael Assunção fight, because he has a 61% takedown defense, and he made Assunção look like he was Bo Nickel. Like, he gave up takedowns all night, and he was really I thought he was like down 2 rounds. I think that was a comeback. I really feel like if that had gone the full way to the decision, his only hope was a split. I thought he was going to lose that fight. So I worry about the takedown defense. But as we talked about earlier in the evening, I no longer care about whether or not people take unfair advantages. This man will cheat for you. He will grab the fence if he's up against the cage. He will do whatever it takes to keep himself upright, and I will take it. Now, his opponent, Daniel Santos, 30 years old, coming out of Shoot the Box, nearly 2-year-long layoff. And this is what's got me kind of, scratching my chin here, Luke. I'm curious. I need somebody to tell me what's going on here, because he was booked against both Daniel Marcos and Said Nurmagomedov, and he withdrew from both of those. He was booked against Munoz twice, and the first time he pulled out of that fight as well with an injury. So for this guy being this uber tier shoot the box prospect, it seems like he's having a lot of injury problems leading up to this fight. And that concerns me. I couldn't find anything online, so I'm not sure what exactly is ailing him, but something very obviously is keeping him from getting into the cage with the regularity that he would like to. He's very, very dangerous, relentless, marauding forward pressure. He's going to bang it out with my guy Davey Grant in the center of the cage, and this fight is going to be nonstop fun. But he does mix in the wrestling. He does mix in the takedowns, and he is a recently promoted BJJ black belt. So definitely the ground game is something that you need to be concerned with going into this fight. Powerful kicks, powerful knees. He's going to be 9 years younger than Davey Grant. I can't do math, apparently. I kind of think if he's healthy, this is a fight that's going to look like it should go under, like 90% of Davey Grant's fights do, but instead it's going to go the distance. Like, both these guys are just going to be so tough that it's not going, neither of them is going to die. They're both going to refuse to die, even though they should. And it's going to end up going the full 15. So I think it's going to be a Santos decision, but that is predicated on the fact that Santos is actually healthy. If Santos is not actually healthy, which given his multiple pullouts, I am suspicious that he is not actually healthy, I kind of like the dog here. This is a spot where I have gone to war with Davey Grant over and over and over and over again, and he really only ever loses by split. So he will fight for your money, and he will fight closely with some of the better guys in this weight class. I have no problem going back to war with him, especially when you're getting a plus 130, plus 140 type of price tag with him. I just want to find out what's wrong with Daniel Santos. Because if I can figure out what's wrong, maybe I dive in. But if I get the word that, I don't know, it's not as bad as it looks, and he's fully healthy, and he's just been getting better this whole damn time, that's terrifying. So I will predict Santos by decision. Final answer. But betting-wise, I know it's thin margins, but I still kind of think it's dog or pass. Talk to me, Luke.
Yeah, this is one I honestly really went back and forth on in terms of picking a winner for a lot of the things that you said. Like, I'm a huge fan of Willie Cat Santos. I'll never forget cashing on him at plus 170 against John Castaneda, where in the first round, I'm like, this is the worst bet I've ever made. And the guy just shows that grit, and that dog comes back, puts it on Castaneda, and wins. Like, that's one of my favorite cashes of all time. Just getting those greasy, junkyard dog, actual dogs at plus 170 that goes through some early adversity, comes back, wins. I love everything about Daniel Santos. But to your point, the guy's fought 3 times in the last 5 years. It's like, it's really hard to know where he's at. And to your point, what is the injury issue or whatever. So it's like our sample in recent years is also kind of small. So still assessing him in current form is kind of difficult. But the one fight that I think is really disconcerting was his debut against Julio Arce, who kind of played an outside volume game and more or less just stuck and moved for 15 minutes. And Santos really couldn't track him down and hit him. Like, Santos was just kind of swinging at air. Davey's a guy that will play the outside. He's going to use a lot of lateral movement. He's going to throw a lot of strikes. It's not, the exact same style. He definitely will bite down in the pocket and throw as well, but he's a guy that can fight effectively from the outside. And I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic. Obviously, if Willie Cat can kind of force this into a brawl, that probably more favors him, I would say. I think he has more power, raw power at least, than Davey Grant does. I don't have a great gauge on the grappling here. I think Santos is probably the more likely party to land takedowns, but he's never been like an excellent control grappler either. At the same time, usually guys are able to work up under him, and he's usually the one that's getting wrestled back to his regional days. So I don't know. I have a lot of questions on this fight. So to me, it's more of just like a pick 'em, dog or pass type of situation, but I'm not sure if I'll get there.
Okay. Fair enough, man. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the dog or pass side of things. Shout out Liam in the chat, Beetlejuice in it. I shout the guy out on a fight, calling him out, and he's immediately popping up in the chat, hearing his name. Yeah, I think that's a good point. The lateral movement that could be used by Davey Grant. The Daniel Santos grappling, like I said, really is the big hesitation for me here, you guys. That's kind of all it comes down to. If I could get guarantees that he wasn't going to wrestle, I'll take it. Davey Grant here all day. But like I said, he always will fight for your money. So very, very close. Very, very close. Davey Grant almost made dog of the week status here, Luke, but I want to sit on it for just a little bit longer before I go ahead and make that decision. Let's move along, everybody. Next fight up, we've got Luis Gurule taking on Ode Osbourne. And we've talked about Ode Osbourne so many times on this show, you guys. We know Ode Osbourne like the back of our hand, don't we? 33 years old, which I say we know him like the back of my hand, but frankly, I was a little surprised at how young he was. I kind of thought Ode was older than that. 12-8, plenty of experience, massive for this weight class. Like, this weight cut kills this guy getting down to 125 pounds. He tends to be a bit of a round one or bust type of fighter here, Luke, and that makes him very, very difficult to bet on. He struggles with fights that get extended because he gasses out. This weight cut takes absolutely everything out of him. The only fight that he has won in the last 4 years, has been the split decision over Charles Johnson, which I personally believe was a blatant robbery. I had the Charles Johnson money line, and we've seen what Charles Johnson has done since that fight. Ode got a full 5-minute recovery from a cup shot that allowed him to kind of continue in that fight, made it closer than it should have been, and the judges went ahead and gave it to him. Brutal that they took that one from me and my boy Charles. But Ode has nuclear power earlier in fights. We see that against the lazy boy Rolando Rodriguez fight at UFC 306. But we also see what happens in that fight when he doesn't get that early kill. He just gets outworked, and then he slows down. He gets figured out. He's very tough to actually KO. He's more of a guy that loses by sub. What do people do? Tired people, they tap. He's got 4 losses by sub. The only guys that have been able to KO him were Kopp and Nam, 2 of the biggest hitters this weight class have ever seen, and they were both in round 1. Ode Osbourne will be 2 inches taller. He'll have a ridiculous 9-inch reach advantage here over his opponent, Luis, who is 10-0, undefeated, 31 years old, won by split decision on Dana White's Contender Series. Looks like he trains at Factory X Muay Thai with guys like Brandon Royval. I did notice he gets bullied around the cage a little bit when it comes to the grappling. Gets backed up pretty well, gets bullied to the ground pretty well. But you know what? He refuses to accept those positions. He does a good job of getting his feet underneath him. He does a good job of getting back up to his feet. Lots of kicks from the outside. He's got a nice stabbing front kick. He's short, he's squat, he's powerful, he likes to move forward. He's got several decisions on his record, and he's got a couple of round 2, round 3 style finishes, which frankly, Luke, I like that from these guys coming into the UFC, because you can see they can fight a hard 15 minutes. A lot of these guys get exposed because they're round 1 or bust type of fighters, and no one ever pushes them. They've never faced that adversity. This guy's faced the adversity, and he's gone through it, and he's come out on the other side of it. So I like that he's not getting rushed in here with only nuking people in round 1. Looks like he's doing this camp training with Corey Sandhagen, so I'm expecting, improvements. The only fear is Ode Osbourne round 1, and the fact that in 2025, undefeated fighters are just getting upset left and right. You do not want to be undefeated in 2025. And it's funny, Luke, the last time I said that, somebody in the chat was bitching me out for giving a completely useless point a useless data point on a fight that had nothing to do with anything else historically. And I was breaking down the Marcin Tybura fight where he pulled off the upset and took an O. So it became perfectly true in hindsight. And I will mention it again because there's 2 spots on this card where an undefeated fighter is going to be braving the MMA gods in 2025. I like Gurule. I actually think he's going to follow the game plan of survive early, turn the tables. And I will be boring, Luke. I think this is an anti-violence card. I think we see another decision here. I think he outworks Ode Osbourne for 2 rounds, wins a 29-28.
Yeah, I've been anti Ode Osbourne from day one, even in some of his earlier runs when the market was still, thinking that this guy had some promise. He's one of these guys that just cannot put together a full 15 minutes in his fights. He just needs things to go really well for him. Like, he's got some good foundational tools, but it's weird. The guy comes from a wrestling background, but he never wrestles offensively and is the one getting out wrestled himself. I've always found that ironic about his game. Despite being a super long, athletic flyweight, he's not a guy that can use and fight behind his length with any sort of extended duration. He usually can early, but he starts to get tired. Guys start to get inside on him. I was also with you. I was on Johnson in that fight against him, and it was just frustrating because hindsight 2020 and what we know now, that Johnson took that fight on short notice. He was incredibly sick going into that fight. And obviously, even with what we saw transpired, Johnson arguably won the fight anyway.
Still won the fight.
The point is, like, if you had a healthy Charles Johnson there, he would have 30-27 that guy. Like, it was just, Ode got Johnson on like the worst possible day he could, and Johnson still almost beat him. So that fight I still consider as a loss, to be honest. But yeah, Gurule's a guy I've been pretty familiar with. I've cashed on him a couple times for some of his regional fights. So he was not a new name to me. And honestly, man, I like the guy, dude. He kind of reminds me of John Lineker a little bit.
That's a good comp.
Just kind of stout bowling ball that's going to kind of walk forward, just mean, aggressive, tough, got 15 minutes of cardio, is going to put it on guys. To me, that's just like a really bad recipe for Ode Osbourne here. It's like, well, Ode is going to sit there and try to be the flashy guy from the outside and throw the jab, and he might have some success early. We have seen Gurule hurt a couple times, so it's not out of the question that Ode is able to block, but Gurule's shown really good recoverability in the 2 times he's been hurt. I just don't see Ode being able to sit there and dance around this guy for 15 minutes. Like, he couldn't even do that to CJ Vergara despite winning that fight. Like, he lost about the last 7.5 minutes of that fight too. And CJ obviously is probably getting his walking papers now too. So I think Gurule's a really tough guy. He obviously is a guy that also comes from a wrestling background. The way he was able to shut down Piccinini, Liam kind of referenced that in the chat as well. Like, Piccinini's a stud out of Oklahoma State, and he gave that dude hell and high water. Like, yeah, he got taken down 10 times, but he only got controlled for 5 minutes, and the majority of that was even against the fence. Like, maybe only a minute or 2 of that was Gurule even on his back. So it's like, the dude's going to be very, very difficult to do anything to from a wrestling perspective. Then the thing that irks me about his game is that he just doesn't wrestle offensively really all that much. He's like a wrestler that wants to strike. And that's the only hesitation I have with him in this matchup, despite making a really bullish case for him on the feet, is that, what does Ode want to do? Ode wants to strike. So in theory, he is giving Ode, assuming he doesn't wrestle, he's giving Ode his theoretical best chance, where Ode's just been terrible on the ground, where I think Gurule should actually wrestle here. So that's just my hesitation. But this is a favorite or pass situation to me. I actually like this Gurule guy a decent amount. I try not to get too fired up about these guys coming in, but he's not one of these dudes that's like 21, 22. It's like, he's a 30-year-old guy. He's paid his dues on the regionals. He's mature. He's one of the main training partners of Brandon Royval, a guy that's been singing his praises for years too. So I do think this guy is UFC level. I like him a decent amount here. Just never Ode Osbourne.
Never Ode. Never Ode. This is the only thing though, is that Ode can absolutely ruin your night with a round 1 KO. Like he does that every once in a while. Every 3 to 5 years, Ode Osbourne pops up and nukes a couple parlays. So just be careful. That could happen in this spot. But shout out Liam to all the grappling knowledge here. He's throwing out for you guys for free in the chat. One thing I want to point out, Liam says didn't see a lot of it in his fights, but heard he has great jiu-jitsu. And if that is true, then maybe we look at that sneaky submission prop, because that is Ode Osbourne's preferred way of losing fights. If this guy does decide to come out and throw on his wrestling shoes, we could see a round 2, round 3 sub finish rather than the decision that I predicted. If he's training with Corey Sandhagen, mixed bag. I kind of think he's probably going to be looking for that more outside striker type of setup if that's the case, but you never know. So take your pick there, you guys. But I think I'm going to be trusting Gurule, and I'll be doing everything I can to fade Ode Osbourne, as always. Next fight up, we have got Robert Valentin, the man they call Robzilla, taking on Torrez, the Punisher, Finney. What a freak show this is. Robert Valentin is Yuri Prochazka minus, right? Like that, Yuri and this guy hang out on mountaintops and tattoo each other and brand each other with, runic symbols and things like that. I think they would get along great if they hung out. And then Torrez Finney, he looks like he's a bad comic book character. If you guys know Rob Liefeld, I made a joke one time that Torrez Finney looks like he was drawn by Rob Liefeld. He's one of the worst comic book artists of all times and just gives people ridiculous proportions and doesn't understand perspective. And Torrez Finney is a real human version of that. I don't know how this guy's body works. He's short and he's got massively long arms. He has zero neck. He's got a huge chest. I couldn't come up with a character like Torrez Finney if I tried. Torrez is 26 years old. He is 10-0, 3 times Dana White's Contender Series competitor. You guys know I have my suspicions about the 2 times Dana White's Contender Series competitor, guys. I don't know what to do about the 3 times competitor, dude. He won his first fight by sub. Dana brought him back. He had a very boring decision where he spent a lot of time grappling, and Dana said that's still not good enough. So they brought him back a 3rd time and said, you better get a damn KO. And he did complete the cycle. He went out there, got takedowns, dragged this guy deep, and had an opportunity to get an arm triangle, which he's very good at, by the way. He got that squeeze on top of people and pounded him out instead. Went ahead and finally got that contract in that spot. I do want to note that it was like a K1 kickboxer type guy, so the wrestling and the grappling was kind of a cheat code to use for that 3rd fight there. Not great. I will shout out, as you guys know, Spectation Sports. We know Torrez Finney from Spectation Sports. He's an Aries Fight Series alumni, so we've had our eye on this guy coming up for a while here. The problem for me, Luke, is I get William Knight vibes from Torrez Finney. Like he's a very strong wrestler. Don't get me wrong. 2-time state wrestling champion, barrels people over, full body. So he's got skills that a guy like William Knight never had. But I just feel like some of these guys are so limited with their stature. At a certain point, people will defend the takedowns. At a certain point, people will figure out the range. They'll be able to get back up. They'll be able to defend. And when that happens, there's just a ceiling on these dudes. That the wrestling will only take you so far. And he doesn't have good enough striking and the body composition strange enough that I just don't see him going to the top 10. I don't see him going to the title. You know what I mean? I mean, prove me wrong. I hope he does, but I'm not seeing the vision here in this spot. Shout out James Lynch, did an interview with him. Apparently they started a new gym, him and Trevor Peak and the boys over there. They're calling Scrapyard MMA, but he did the majority of this camp out at Fusion XL. So he's working with really good guys like Rodolfo Vieira, which I think is points towards, hey, pair that wrestling with some sick jiu-jitsu and maybe you got something going here. His opponent in this spot, Robzilla, one of the best names in MMA today, 30 years old. He lost in the Ultimate Fighter finale and apparently had a broken arm going into that fight, or got a broken arm in the first round of that fight. I got to double check that. I'm not sure which, but he had his opponent in all kinds of trouble, had his back, had him flattened out, was under the neck. I mean, he had every opportunity to finish this rear naked choke. And I'm going, how did he not get this submission? And apparently it was because he had a broken arm, so he couldn't get the squeeze going the way that he needed to. I mentioned Yuri Prochazka. This guy comps to Yuri Light very, very well. He's a wild man. Not much on the way of technique, lots of toughness, lots of heart. He will wrestle, he will scramble, he will reverse positions, he'll explode and physically just buck out of things. He thrives in chaos. He loves a war. And he's a very violent fighter. He's got power on the feet. struggles off of his back, but he'll at least look for reversals and ways to get up and take people's back. He's going to be an insane 6 inches taller than Torrez Finney. Robzilla will have a 2-inch reach advantage, and Torrez Finney is about minus 250 here in this spot. I feel like Rob can maybe be a little bit better than he showed in the Ultimate Fighter finale, but even if he is a little bit better than he showed in the Ultimate Fighter finale, he still might be worse than Torrez Finney. This is a tough fight for me because I kind of want to make money fading Torrez Finney, but I need the opponent to do it, and I'm not sure Robzilla is that guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I rounded out my breakdowns. I don't think that Valentin is the guy personally, but I completely understand your sentiment that, I think there is going to be coming a good fade spot on Finney down the line. What I will say, though, for Valentin, like, the guy does commit to his strikes on the feet. We have seen Finney hurt before. We really haven't seen him like extended at distance much either, where we do have more distance time for Valentin. So, I mean, in the scenario that Finney is stuck on the feet here, I mean, I don't know how anybody could have any real confidence with the guy at this point. The problem I have with Valentin is, like, I actually think his jiu-jitsu is pretty good, but it's like he's just a bad defensive wrestler. He's not particularly easy to get taken down. And I mean, the last 2 guys that have ultimately beat him have come from stronger wrestling and sambo backgrounds. But what is interesting is what you touched on with the Loader fight, that Valentin did find his way to the back of Loader and, was really close to finishing that fight. We haven't seen anybody on the back of Torrez Finney. Like, can the guy defend rear naked chokes? I mean, I have
you
no idea.
cannot choke that which has no neck, Luke.
Well, what I will say is I think the guy's going to be impossible to guard sub, because he has, like, a couple of guys have tried triangles on him, and because it's like this, the guy just pulls out. It's like there's like nowhere for you to put your leg on the guy. He's got no neck. And I think the commentators in one of the fights were kind of making like the comparison to like Derek Lewis, when one guy was like trying to Kimura him or something. It's like the guy's like Derek Lewis. It's like, yeah, you can grab his arm, but it's like the guy's just too strong. You're not going to Kimura this guy. So it's like, I don't think this guy's ever going to get guard subbed. I'm just saying, like, if Valentin has the positions that he had on Loader, how does Torrez Finney react in those situations? I'm not entirely sure. So I do think there's some scope for that, but yeah, I think the most likely outcome is that probably Finney out wrestles him to a decision, to be honest with you. Maybe gets him out with ground and pound, but like I said, there's definite ways that this fight can go wrong for the 5'8" bowling ball, so.
I hear you. My guy Pepe in the chat saying, anyone else think this line is crazy? And trust me, Pepe, it's not going to take a lot. Like, do we really fade Torrance though in his debut? Because I feel like this is a spot where they're going to try and puff the guy up a little bit, right? 3 times Dana White's Contender Series competitor. He's got this, closet following, a little viral fan base. They put him on the show multiple times. So there's eyes on Torrance Finney. I think they're going to want him to succeed. And that's the kind of thing that worries me, is that, behind closed doors, the talent scouts, are they going, all right, we're pushing Torrance and we're going to give him a guy that he can beat? And if so, like, I don't want to bet against the guy that they think can lose to Torrance Finney out there, but I completely get it. And yeah, Dan pointing out the undefeated fighters in 2025 angle, and maybe we just roll with it. I don't know if Valentin can defend the takedowns from Torrez Finney, and that's really the problem for me. He's got such a Yoel Romero explode and reload type of wrestling style. Torrance looks like he's about to gas, but then he hits a takedown and he gets on top of you and heaves for 2 minutes. And there's nothing you can do about it because you can't get him off of you. So as long as he gets that takedown, he can catch his breath and keep on going. If this thing is extended on the feet, Rob's got power, and we've seen Torrance busted up badly. So step in, knees, big elbows. Like, I absolutely think there's ways that Rob Zillow finishes this fight and can hurt Torrance Finney and steal moments and cause some problems. Yeah, Liam's got the right idea there. Violence, definitely. And shout out Chronic Combat Boys. What's going on, guys? Good to see you here in the chat. Yeah, so, man, I don't know. I'm not parlaying Torrance Finney, though. This is your PSA of the week on top of Loma Lookboonmee, guys. Be very, very careful parlaying Torrance Finney. You got to know what you're getting into here in this spot, and especially considering his opponent, his only fight that we've seen at the potential UFC level he had an injury coming into, I've got questions. So I just be very, very careful if you decide to parlay up Torrence Finney in this spot. All right, guys, got to shout out Spectation Sports. We got a week off here for Spectation Sports, but that doesn't stop me from talking about them. They had an absolute banger doubleheader last week on Friday night. Unfortunately, I missed it, so I'm going to go back and have to rewatch all those fights myself. But I heard that it turned out being pretty dang good. Even though we've got a week off, we do want to shout out Torrence Finney as being a Spectation Sports alumni. So going to dig into some of his old fight footage here. That's something that you can do here on Spectation Sports. They're an alternative, and I would say a better alternative to UFC Fight Pass. A lot of young, up-and-coming and new shows, exciting shows are coming under this platform, and with Dana White's Contender Series right around the corner, you're going to want to be able to watch these fighters compete. You're going to want to be able to tape and study these guys. You can get a discount using promo code DIEHARD. Use the link in the description below to sign up over at Spectation Sports. Everybody loves more MMA action, and then you can also use that to study and prep for when you're killing the bookies on Dana White's Contender Series. So get them checked out here. Shout out the boys over at Fight Odds. If you're looking to be a serious DFS player, the tools and the trends they use, their odds screen are undeniable, undefeated. They're the best in the game. Pepe, are you guys still running the service? They've got a show coming up, you guys, and Pepe said something about it being the last show, and I want to shout out the boys as much as I possibly can, but I don't know if the website's going to be operating much longer. So sign up at your own risk, I guess. Like, Pepe, tell me, is the show ending, but the site staying up and running, or what? Because I need to know. I need to clarify that with John before the next ad read, I guess. But at any rate, I love Fight Numbers. They've done a wonder as far as my DFS game goes. The trends, the tools, they've been fantastic. I really hope the site stays up and running because it is fantastic, and the tools really have helped my DFS game. Finally, bet openly, you guys. Get signed up. I'm doing giveaways. I'm doing contests every single week. So if you want to come check it out, there's a free way to get your foot in the door. Also, you're getting 1% juice for the rest of your life. There's no limits. Because it's peer-to-peer betting, you're not going to get shut down. You're allowed to gamble with anybody who will fill your bets. And you can take bets and house parlays for other people. That's what I am doing. I currently have a parlay booked for this evening, actually. I am parlaying, let's see, my opponent said that the Rangers were going to win and the Astros were going to win. So I've got the Reds and the Giants and just need one of them to win. Well, I suck at baseball, you guys. I am the worst MLB bettor on planet Earth, and I'm just hoping other people out there is as bad as I am. So I'm trying out a new theory. I'm going to book people's parlays on Bet Openly for baseball season and see what that does for me. By the way, the Cincinnati Reds, they're up 14-1 right now. So I think I'm going to win this parlay. So some degenerate out there wanted to do a parlay, and I granted their wish. It's going to bite them in the ass, but hey, it's going to work out for me. That's how Bet Openly works. You can play the house side, or you can be the side putting the bet out there. They also have instant booking DFS props, which includes things like significant strikes for UFC fighters and fantasy scores and, home run parlays, all that stuff you can do. And that's the one thing that Bet Openly does actually house and doesn't make you bet peer-to-peer. You can do those kind of degenerate parlays on there. It's a really cool book, you guys. Hit the link in the description below. Check it out. Even if you've already signed up, just support your Uncle Clint and hit some of these links in the description of the video here. I am joined by Luke from Sparring with Reality, one of the good guys in the MMA game here. We're breaking down UFC Vegas 105, and the next fight we're going to talk to you about is none other than Gerald Meerschaert taking on Brad Tavares. This is a gatekeeper veterans war. I love it, Luke. I love these guys are getting each other at the right stage of their careers. What's to say about Gerald Meerschaert at this point in the game? He's long in the tooth. He's a little bit old. The man will fight for your money, but he's 37. He's got good, solid boxing. He's seemingly improving in that area. He's been a club and sub guy lately, not so much just a sub and sub guy recently. So he's not out on the feet. He had an absolute war with Reiner de Ridder, a massive man at this weight class, and it really took Gerald slowing down and getting too tired to do much for Reiner to go ahead and get the win in the third round of that fight. But it was a battle. It was a hell of a fight. Brad Tavares on the other side of this thing, 20-10, 37 years old as well. And this guy has been the bar as far as gatekeeper goes in this weight class for a long time, but he's fallen on hard times. 1-4 in his last 5. His last loss coming to Jung Young Park via split decision. Heartbreaker on that one. Got TKO'd by Gregory Rodriguez. Before that, just a home run spot when he finally got thrown a softball with Chris Wyman a couple fights ago. But this guy not doing so hot right now. His wins are Chris Wyman, who old busted retired. Amari Akhmedov via split decision, who old busted potentially retired, fighting and losing in the PFL. Antonio Carlos Jr., who while he did go to the PFL and win $1 million, old busted, PFL. Like these are the guys he's beating. Christoph Jocko, PFL. Like he doesn't have any good current UFC wins. I hate to say it, but Brad Tavares, as much of a warrior as he is, as much of a skill set as he's got, like he's very serviceable everywhere. Good takedown defense, hard to control, hard to finish. He's always been extremely resistant to the submissions. He has been knocked out a couple of different times, but he's beating all guys that don't belong in the UFC anymore. He's losing to everybody else. This has got to be a Gerald Meerschaert pass spot, man. I know both them are old. I know both them are busted. But if I'm looking at anybody with my money in this spot, it would have to be GM3. And somehow Brad Tavares is minus 265 in this spot. Frankly, I don't get it. I know Gerald lost, and people are weird about Reiner de Ritter and think he's awful for some reason, but he's not. And Gerald pushed that guy to the limit before getting caught in the third round. He recently turned back Edmund Shabazian and Brian Barberena. He does this Homer Simpson thing of taking a beating and then outlasting people and taking over the deeper the fight goes. I don't think he's going to have to do that against Brad. I think he can just go out there and compete with a guy like Brad. I think he can strike with a guy like Brad. If he does manage to get the grappling going, he might be the first guy to actually submit Brad Tavares. That's a tall order, but it's entirely possible in my opinion. This is Gerald Meerschaert pass for me. Luke, what do you make of this fight?
Yeah, my original reaction when I saw the booking was that this was just or was going to be a rerun of Tavares versus Antonio Carlos Jr. Brad stuffs the takedowns. Brad's better on the feet. Brad wins, a decision. That was kind of my original thought. But after digging into it some more, I just really don't think Brad Tavares has looked good recently. I feel like he's pretty evidently a declining fighter. Like they gave him an absolute lollipop in Chris Weidman, who, like you said, is retired now. He compromises Weidman's legs 2 minutes into that fight and he can't finish him.
I was so mad.
In fact, in round 2, he was the one that was getting cracked with shots from Weidman. And I'm just like watching it. Like, I'm not trying to like make the argument that Weidman won or anything. My point is like, dude, you should have finished Chris Weidman in that scenario. And it's like,
I was so furious. I had him by finish. And when Weidman couldn't walk and he laid off the legs, I was like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's just stuff like that. And I mean, obviously getting beat by, RoboCop, not the worst thing in the world. But what's interesting about the last 2 fights, because one of the more like talking points of Brad Tavares over the years is how good the guy's takedown defense is. I mean, I've been one of those people Tavares, elite takedown defense, elite get up game. But in his last 2 fights, he's given up 2 takedowns in both of them, which is not, common for Brad Tavares. And in fact, Junior Park in round 3 pretty much had his back for the entire round. Like, so it's like, not only is the guy, I think, regressing as a striker because he's a base kickboxer, but he hasn't knocked anybody out. He hasn't dropped anybody in 4 years. He's landing less than 4 distance strikes a minute. So he's not voluming people up over a long sample size now, with the exception of a handful of fights. Now his primary thing of being able to stay upright, now he's getting taken down more. It's like, to me, it's like we're just seeing this constant decline for Brad Tavares. And while Meerschaert's obviously a base jiu-jitsu guy, he's always had underrated striking in my eyes. I'm not saying the guy's going to go out there and win any glory kickboxing titles anytime soon, but it's like, he actually he has this really rickety style that really makes it work for him. And it's ironic. And I ended up just doing a much deeper dive into this, but if you even go and look at the guy's distance metrics, and obviously it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense because of Tavares being the base kickboxer and Meerschaert being the jiu-jitsu guy, but it's like, these dudes' distance metrics are almost identical. Like in both offensively and defensively, Tavares lands 4.3, Meerschaert lands 4.5. They actually have the exact same percentage, 41.8 accuracy. Tavares eats 4 distance strikes a minute. GM3 eats 4.3. They both defend at 59%. Like they legitimately have almost identical distance metrics. And it's like, while GM3 has been like quasi chinny over the years, he's also like sneakily had shown some power components. Brad Tavares is starting to get hurt more. Like I said, Brad Tavares isn't hurting anybody. So my thought process is like, honestly, the striking's probably pretty competitive here if nobody's getting hurt. And Gerald's got pretty much all of the offensive grappling upside. So the more I've thought about this fight, I kind of think the line is insane. Like, I mean, unless Tavares knocks him out, I really don't see any other way he's covering a minus 250 prize. Like I said, he hasn't knocked anybody out. And like, I mean, when's the last time Brad Tavares has actually scored a knockout? 2018 in round 3 against Chris Jocko. So I think it might be GM3 season, bro.
Oh, I'm with you, Luke. I think we're going to have to do it, man. I think we're going to have one last ride with the old dog, Gerald Meerschaert season. My guy, half the battle in the chat, Dan saying Brad Tavares minus 250 straight. Never sweat a 30-27 so much in my life. And Liam with a good point here. The underrated kickboxing of GM3, he's just slow as molasses. He did, in fact, beat Muradov's ass, and he did kill Bruno Silva standing, and then he claimed that victory for jiu-jitsu with the club and sub. You gotta like it there. Meatball saying GM3's body kicks are going to be open here, and that's a fair point as well. Yeah, man, I think we're going to have to play some GM3. I don't know that there's much else that we can do. Hey, there's my boy Razor Sharp Picks in the house. If you guys need some action worth tailing in any sport besides MMA. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, he's 3-0 in his last 3 bets for MMA as well. Razor's been absolutely killing it. One of the few guys that I trust with my money where I blindly tail when he tells me to do stuff, and his college basketball run has been phenomenal. He's got a killer ticket right now, 10-1 on Houston, I want to say, that's in the Final Four. So yeah, man, let's go. Love my guy Razor Sharp. So make sure you give him a follow, check him out if you're looking for other action out there too. All right, we like GM3. I think it's to shout out the boys from Fight Odds. It's the Circle Jerk play of the week. Everyone agreeing. We're all in on it. Let's go. Kennedy Nzechukwu and Martin Buday. It is heavyweight season here, Luke. And I'll be honest with you, though. I am not entirely ready to trust Kennedy Nzechukwu. Everyone is all hyped up on this guy. He's finally made his heavyweight debut, and he's 2-0 at heavyweight, and he's just massacring people up here. But let's be real. Who is he really massacring so far at heavyweight? He's got back-to-back finishes over Lucas Brzeski and Chris Barnett. Like, poor Chris Barnett. That guy's barely hanging on for dear life. He should be getting fun fights against other people who don't belong in the UFC, but they throw him Kennedy, and he gets absolutely murdered by a guy who he can't even touch because of the height and reach disadvantages. Lucas Brzeski is barely UFC caliber, and he's not super durable. He got absolutely murked in that spot as well. I know Ryan Spann just recently also made the move to heavyweight because Kennedy has had so much success. Well, guess what? Ryan Spann was not a different fighter when he got to heavyweight. These are different human beings, sure, but I think Kennedy is the same Kennedy we've always seen. He just isn't cutting as much weight anymore. And one thing we've known about Kennedy is his skills are A+. I like his striking. I like his ability to stay long. I like his wicked chokes. I like that he can sink in guillotines and attack stuff with those long, lanky arms. But Luke, he is not durable. We've seen Kennedy get rocked and wobbled and cracked many times before. He's recovered a couple of times and gotten finished himself afterwards, but I'm old enough to remember when Da-Woon Jung knocked this guy out with elbows through a full guard. I mean, we're talking this guy had elbows up in front of his head and everything, and Da-Woon Jung hit him so hard he still fell over without even truly connecting with the guy's head. Dustin Jacoby knocked this guy out, and you know who Dustin Jacoby knocks out in MMA? Nobody. He's a decisionator in the UFC. He's not a KO guy, but he knocked out this guy. So now we're moving up to heavyweight. I don't think that the weight cut was the problem. I just don't believe that the durability was because he was sucking himself down to 205 of all things. I think Kennedy is just not the most durable guy on planet Earth. Martin Buday, he's no prize. He's nothing to write home about at heavyweight, man. 33 years old. He's just a big, classic, lumbering heavyweight body. This guy will come forward. The one thing he excels at, knees. If this guy pins you up against the fence, he will knee the hell out of your body, and he's very good at doing that. He's also a very big, hard guy to get off of you, so he can lean on and wear on you. And he's got multiple finishes by body strikes where he just TKOs these guys with his knees up against the fence. Now, they've got a common opponent in Łukasz Brzeski, and Martin Buday, arguably robbed him in a split decision there. That was a very close, very competitive fight. He just got a split decision win over Andrei Arlovski, and the only loss he's had in the UFC so far was Shamil Gaziev. So there's not a whole lot that I have to complain about for Martin Buday as far as his run goes in the UFC so far. It's just he's a bit of a decisionator. He doesn't really separate himself, whereas his opponent in this case, Kennedy, is a finisher. So you're going to want the upside of the finish, but Buday's been relatively tough and durable, except for the time he fought Shamil. So I kind of don't want to trust Kennedy at these odds. Minus 325, just an insane number when he's fighting his first real heavyweight in the UFC. Plus 260, I am extremely interested in this underdog. And if there's any grappling, I just want to shout out the Martin Buday Kimura. It's his favorite submission. He's a big, heavy man, and I've tried to warn people, especially like on Twitter and stuff like that. I tried to talk sense to people over there. When you're doing submission grappling, Kimuras are very hard to do in the UFC. Think about Torrez Finney, right? Like that guy's just got too much muscle on him to be able to pull that type of a Kimura off unless you get the angle perfectly. Most people are not going to get the angle perfectly. They're a very difficult submission to hit in high-level mixed martial arts. But when you're the bigger man, when you're the stronger man, and you get the proper angle and leverage, that's when Kimuras work. Martin Buday knows how to get Kimuras. He will be the naturally bigger man in this fight. If he gets on top of Kennedy, look for that sub prop. I'm just saying it's possible. I think it's probably Martin Buday, and I would think with the chin issues of Kennedy, I'd lean more towards the knockout. But the inside the distance, because of that threat of the submission, should probably be there. And with Kennedy's affinity for getting finishes himself, maybe we just bet violence in this fight and go under. I'm not sure what to do. There's a lot of options, but I think I kind of like the dog in this spot here. Luke, what do you make?
Yeah, this fight's a mess for so many different reasons. I've never been a Martin Buday guy just because I don't really rate any of his wins. Like the primary, I guess, positive of his fighting style is that he just pushes people against the fence. He's not a very good offensive wrestler. I mean, the guy got 2x'd at distance by Łukasz Brzeski. I'm never going to forgive him for that. Like Łukasz Brzeski is one of the worst heavyweights. Well, no longer on the roster. Getting 2x'd at distance by that guy.
Did they cut him? Did he get dropped?
I'm pretty sure they did. I thought
they were letting him.
I could be wrong, but either way, getting 2x'd at distance by that guy is embarrassing. He's going life and death with Jake Collier, who's about to. Both guys are going into cardiac arrest. He was just had more in the tank than Jake Collier, where Jake Collier dives on a takedown in round 3 like a beached whale and falls over. That's how Martin Buday wins that fight. Kimura-ing Josh Parisian means very little to me. Gaziev just walked forward and beat the shit out of him. Now he's going to a greasy split with the ghost of Andrei Arlovski in a fight where he was also outlanded at distance. It's like, I don't really know what this guy is overtly great at. And honestly, like one of the more positive attributes for him was like that everybody talked about was like, oh, this guy's durable. He's durable. He's durable. It's like, I mean, if you look through his run, like who has he fought that even really hits remotely hard? Pretty much only one guy, and that's Shamil Gaziev, and he knocked him out. So it's like, is Martin Buday actually that durable against people that can actually crack? I'm not entirely sure about that, but to your point in relation to Kennedy, I mean, he's just a guy, my opinion's been really just all over the board with him because he's been objectively so inconsistent where, you know, some fights he starts fast, some fights he starts slow, some fights he throws a high amount of strikes, some fights he doesn't throw many strikes, some fights he grapples, most of them he doesn't. Sometimes the guy's shown he can take one hell of a shot. Sometimes the guy just folds like a lawn chair. Like, so he's got all the tools. And I do actually think this move up to heavyweight is going to be a good one for him personally. But yeah, he's just so inconsistent, like getting beat by the ghost of OSP. It's like, it's like, it's just hard with him because sometimes he goes out there and looks great and sometimes he just doesn't. So it's like, I mean, it's just like never Kennedy minus 300 for me. Like I would rather, I'll say something else. I'll leave that alone, but just never Kennedy at major juice for me. But Buday is a guy that I don't really want to click either. Cause like I said, I mean, what is his price? Do you think he's going to easily just take Kennedy down? And like Kennedy's pretty tough to take down. Is he going to outland Kennedy?
I think he's going to lean on him. I think he's just going to lean on him.
Do you think he's going to be able to just hold him against the fence though?
Kinda. Kennedy's taller than him, so Buday can get head position, and just kind of squeeze him up against the fence there. Kennedy was afraid of OSP, like you said, and they had a staring contest that the judges decided OSP should get his hand raised for when neither guy did jack. So he's fighting one guy finally that has a little bit of power. And if Buday gets the respect with literally any type of shot in this fight, I could see Kennedy freezing up. And I'm with you. It's never Kennedy minus 300, and Buday is a very difficult click also. But because of that, it's dog or pass only for me. A minus 300 that's got serious chin issues and potential fear freezing issues, can't do it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have a penny on this fight personally. I think if a good Kennedy shows up, I think he wins the fight at a decent clip. But I get it, sloppy heavyweight inconsistency. Take the big plus,
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Steer into the volatility, roll the dice on the dog, if anything. And it's probably a good pass spot, guys. Good fireball and popcorn fight. Go grab a drink. Don't take this one too seriously. Maybe a sprinkle on violence, because of all the things we've talked about. Maybe there's a chance this thing goes under on both sides of this. So it depends on the number. Let's see where they put it. And we can talk about that a little bit more on my totals show later on in the week. Shout out my guy, Razor Sharp. Not only is he giving me tickets to cash, he's donating $20 on the stream. Thank you, buddy. Definitely appreciate you for that. If you guys wouldn't mind, he said to get me to 4K subscribers. Being out on your own in these YouTube streets, it ain't easy, guys. This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I've had a sponsor for the last 5 years of the podcast, so I'm finally doing this thing on my own, and I'm playing with some different content ideas. And I know I talked about doing a Patreon, and then that felt weird because I've never had anything like a Patreon where people would, support me with dollars and cents. So I didn't end up starting that. And I probably should. I think I might have to go back to that, but it feels weird. So I don't know, I'm kind of lost at this point. But any type of donos in the chat like that, I appreciate it. And subscriptions really is probably the best thing you can do for me right now. So if you're not subscribed, please get subscribed to the channel. We'll see if we can grow this thing and get it going that direction. Next fight up, we've got Cortavious Romious, and he takes on Chang Lee, a couple of guys where, if you rattle those names off back to back, it's like you're casting spells on Harry Potter. What a combo we got here with these two guys. Cortavious Romious and I, we got a little thing. We got a little thing going on here, Luke. We got some good stuff going on here. This guy was one of the most hyped Dana White's Contender Series prospects I've seen in a long time. Unnecessarily. He's 31 years old, and he came into his UFC debut against Gaston Bolanos as a minus 200-ish favorite, and I couldn't for the life of me figure it out. I finally found my balls. I collected them from my wife's purse, and I put my money down on Gaston Bolanos. He was my dog of the week, and that really was the first dog of the week I had hit in 5 or 6 weeks. So it really started to turn things for me ever so slowly last year. And I was so proud of that call because I was I do not understand this. He's the smaller fighter. He's not the best wrestler in the world. And most wrestlers are really good with jiu-jitsu because they dominate and they get on top and then they're dangerous. But this guy has grown somehow comfortable from his back. So even though he's fast, he's explosive, he's athletic, he's really quick, twitchy, he can hit people with big power shots, he can wrestle. Somehow he finds himself on his back fishing for arm bars. He's gotten too comfortable with his jiu-jitsu, and he's, where's Mufasa when I need him? Remember who you are. He's decided he's a jiu-jitsu guy instead of being a wrestler. And sure enough, Gaston was able to out-scramble him, get up to the feet, go ahead and strike with him, do some damage, won the decision. I felt real good about that. But fast forward a couple of months, and now he's an underdog to Chang Lee. And you guys know that my pecking order goes Dana White's Contender Series, Cage Warriors, shit, the shit that whales poop out, and then road to UFC. That's the order. That's the order of operations that we go in here. And Chang Ho Lee is coming off of a split decision win in the finale of the road to UFC. He's 1-0 in the UFC, and it's not a real UFC fight because his opponent was Long Zhao, a 26-year-old kid with a massively inflated record who's got over 30 professional fights because they took any and every fight that he could possibly get, and somehow he still sucks. Like, it was a banger. Don't get me wrong, Luke. That was a fun fight. These guys are both bloody. They're mixing it up. They're coming forward. They're beating the hell out of each other. But neither guy did anything good. Like, neither guy dominated a position. Neither guy could establish control. Like, they both couldn't hold on to each other. It was low level and it was sloppy. It was fun to watch. But neither guy is good. I don't understand why Cortavious Romious is the underdog in this spot. I really do not get it. And somehow it looks like money is coming in on Chang Ho Lee. Scratch that. I don't know what happened, but since the podcast, apparently money is coming in on Cortavious Romious, and that sucks because I was waiting, Luke. I was waiting. I wanted plus 140 or better on Cortavious Romious because it looked like it was headed that direction. He is getting hit right now as we speak, and that number is coming down, and that makes me very, very disappointed because Cortavious Romious is my Link Memorial Dog of the Week. We bet against him in his UFC debut. He is getting a far easier fight in his second outing here, and I will fade every road to UFC guy I can get my hands on with any type of reasoning whatsoever. He will be more powerful physically than Long Zhao. He will be able to get the wrestling going against Long Zhao, and when Long Zhao tries to stand up or does the things that he does, he'll make a mistake, and I actually think Cortavious Romious can submit this guy. So I think we zig when others zag. We bet against him the first time. We're betting on him this time. I'm taking Cortavious Romious as a dog. What do you make of this fight, Luke?
Another shit show. Honestly,
Yes.
I don't really rate either of these guys very highly. Depending on booking, I would actually be surprised if either made it to a second UFC contract. I mean, even on the Chang Ho Lee side, his last fight was razor close. That could have realistically gone the either way. I think most people actually scored the fight for Long Zhao. I mean, it was razor close, but even in his fight against Zhao Pasi prior to that, he was down the first 2 rounds of that fight, and then found a finish in round 3. But if that fight saw the scorecards, he would have lost. He's kind of like this relentless wrestler archetype that's, had a lot of success on the, Japanese or whatever regionals. But when his game, usually when he's not able to get going on his wrestling, he's very, rock'em sock'em on the feet. He's never going to be a guy that's really going to separate from anybody there. But this Romious guy at the same time, he was super hyped going into the debut. And I was kind of with you. I didn't actually have the stones to bet Bolaños, but I did say it was a dog or pass situation. I cashed on the over there. That was sweaty as shit too, but
Yes,
got home with that one. But it's weird with both these guys though, because it's like they're in their early 30s. Like these guys aren't like young fighters, and this is bantamweight. Like, so it's like I pretty much watched Romius's career cradle to grave now for like the second time, and I just haven't seen any evolution in this guy's game. He's like the exact same fighter. He's going to sit there and wrestle and potentially catch submissions, but he's a guy that will sacrifice the back for arm bars, which I absolutely hate. I just think it's a low IQ decision more often than not. And he's kind of like Torrez Finney in the sense he's like incomparable, like to the bantamweight like class. Like the dude is so jacked, like he doesn't really have the body frame of a guy that should be like proactively taking backs. Like he's like too short, like I feel like he's a guy that would just serve us better if he can remain on top, work from half guard, throw ground and pound. To your point, now the guy thinks he's Gordon Ryan, but he's like a purple belt. Like I think the guy's jiu-jitsu is massively overrated. His cardio has failed when his game does not get going. Like, listen, the guy gave up more control time to Gaston Bolaños than he got. Bolaños is a kickboxer that has historically had trouble with archetypes like Romious, and he's sitting there ending rounds on his back. He's getting outlanded at distance by Bolaños, who's a very, very low volume guy. Like, I understand that was his debut, step up in competition, but it's like getting out controlled and outlanded by Bolaños is bad. Bad, bad, bad. And I just feel like this Channel Lee guy, while Romious has like more big moment, more knockout upset, he's going to be the physically stronger guy. I'm not really sure he's going to be able to just hold this Chan Ho Lee guy down. And I'm not really sold that he's going to submit him. And I just feel like while Romious is like the more athletic, more upside based fighter, I feel like this Chan Ho Lee guy is just tougher and he has better cardio. And I think that might be all that you need to beat Romious at this point if you cannot get finished, because I don't think this guy does well with adversity at all. He needs to be in the driver's seat, and he just continues to make just elementary mistakes in his fights that he was making back in 2017 that he's still making in 2025. I'm not a fan of either of these guys. So to me, it's a high variance fight, but I'm actually going to go with Lee here.
Wow. Okay. All right. Good luck to you betting on a Dana White's Contender Series guy. You know, one thing to think about, though, maybe...
I never said I was betting him. I just said I'm picking him to win.
Fair enough. Maybe an under? I kind of feel like Holy forces gunfights. Like, I could see this fight getting violent, and whether Cortavious Romious finds a sub in one of these transitions or lands something off his back, the other option is he gets finished, because if he can't keep up, and Lee is big and physical and powerful enough to kind of keep on trucking through what he's able to put out there, I could see him kind of wilting maybe further on down the stretch. So lean Cortavious, lean under. I'm not going to say lean because I'm picking him. Dog of the week. We're going to get in there on Cortavious. Hopefully I can find a better number, though, because plus 115 would kind of suck when I passed on plus 125, plus 130 a little bit earlier this afternoon, thinking it was going to go the other direction. With him coming in so hyped up and then losing his debut, I thought the love was going to be on the other side, but I guess you can't count on that when the opponent is a road to UFC guy. All right, guys. Co-main event of the evening. We are talking about Joanderson, Brito, and Pat Sabatini. Gotta love this fight, man. Pat Sabatini, a guy that I have been notorious for not being able to get right. Always kind of counted him a little bit on the chinny side, but I feel like that narrative has died down ever so slightly recently. He's a insane high-level grappler, very physical, very powerful, strong wrestler, paired with 6 submissions, can climb people like a freaking tree. He's 2-2 in his last 4 fights. 3 losses by KO at 34 years old, which is definitely something that I worry about. And his opponent, Joanderson Brito, definitely somebody that I think the UFC likes. 30 years old, little mini Yoel Romero, a guy that likes to explode into everything and takes a couple deep breaths, gets that air back, and then goes again. He's on a 5-fight win streak. He had that snapped, I apologize, by William Gomi via split decision, a night that really upset a lot of people because Brito was in like everybody's parlays that night. Those five wins, though, all of them by finish. This guy can hurt you with the hands. This guy can grab a neck. He's got a ridiculously tight squeeze. I'll never forgive him for what he did to JSP. I had a big bet on JSP that night, and I will never not be upset about JSP poking the bear and talking shit and then getting submitted. He's very hard to control. Now, I know a guy like William Gomi did it, but you look back at the losses, the 2 UFC losses that Brito has, it's Gomi and it's Bill Aljo. It's these tall, lanky, technical striker type of dudes that can outpoint him and then don't break from the pressure. That's really what causes him problems. Pat Sabatini's another little tank grappler type of fighter. So I'm not sure he's going to cause the same problems for Joanderson Brito. And if Brito is able to explode out of some of these positions, Pat's maybe the kind of guy that can float and stay on top of him and find the back or find an arm triangle in a transition, something like that. He was having trouble with JSP in that area initially, but I just feel like at some point Brito's going to land. I can't get the chinny accusations out of my mind for Pat Sabatini. I think it's Joanderson Brito by knockout, man. I don't like the money line. Like I said, in his last fight, he lost a split decision that was close. He didn't fight super optimally. The judges went the other way. Maybe he won, but it was close. I don't want to go back to laying minus 230 on the guy in that circumstance. I would lean more towards the violence. And if he does beat Pat, it's probably the same way most people beat Pat, which is touching him on the chin.
Yeah, I kind of think Brito's going to knock him out early personally too, but kind of to the historics with Brito, he's a guy that does get tired. And, if he doesn't get Sabatini out of there and Sabatini's kind of able to work into his game, I mean, I don't trust Brito down the stretch in a fight like this personally. So just on that pretense alone, I really don't have interest at minus 230 and can understand people taking the shot at Sabatini, but I kind of think he's a better live bet personally. Where instead of like laying the juice with Brito, looking to like maybe an under 1.5, a KO1, something like that, maybe getting more creative with the totals or the props. But I think Brito, especially early, is just going to be too physical for Pat. Like even if you go back to Pat's fight with Diego Lopez, like he had a couple viable takedown attempts early, and Diego was just like, "Get off of me," and then he just knocked him out. I understand though, like Pat is a very, very good grappler, high level jiu-jitsu, good wrestler, but he's kind of a weenie at times too, where it's like and I love Pat. I've made money betting Pat.
That's the best insult in all of MMA, man. If you are an MMA fighter and you get called a weenie, I don't know why, but it's just the funniest damn thing to me. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I feel like Pat's really going to struggle with the physicality early, and I think Brito's going to be landing big shots. So that's what I think happens. But like I said, I think things could get really, really, really hairy if this fight extends and Pat finds positions.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think it gets greasy potentially. I'm gonna say Brito KO, but I'm not getting involved in that money line in this spot. Definitely one you probably want to keep an eye on live. I could see him giving up the takedowns early, especially like I mentioned, JSP had a lot of grappling success to begin with in that fight, so I could see Pat doing kind of the same thing. I also could see Brito coming out with a flying knee and just ending this thing in the first 20 seconds of the fight. So I don't know what to do with this one. I want to see the knockout number when it comes out. Maybe we do something with that Brito KO since that is what I'm predicting in this spot. But for now, it's going to be a pass. My guy Ian in the chat, parlay Demopoulos and Cortavious. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, with my two looks on the card this week, Luke, I'm not feeling too great about them because I'm on the other side of Demopoulos, obviously, but still. And then Cortavious is the other play that just stands out as the obvious plus money spot here to me. What a greasy card, man. What a greasy card.
Yeah, I think this is the type of card you probably don't want to have a ton of exposure on personally. Maybe if you want to take your little pops here and there, but this is not a card I would recommend being overtly heavy on, in my opinion.
Yeah, that is probably fair, and that's probably the right answer. Main event time, everybody. We got Josh Emmett taking on Lerone Murphy. Absolutely love both these guys. Josh Emmett was my dark horse for a long time, Luke. I loved this guy. I really was just hoping one day he would get a crack at the title. He's been around forever. He's got ridiculous, thunderous power. He can wrestle. He can go high volume if he needs to. This guy put up his fight with Shane Burgos. That was like an instant all-time classic fight. If you guys have never watched Josh Emmett versus Shane Burgos, please run that fight tonight. That fight is a treat. Violence incarnate. He put up like 200 significant strikes or something like that night. It was absolutely insane. And then you've got the highlight reel of him just deading a guy like Bryce Mitchell. Beautiful. You love to see it, right? You love to see it, especially the way Bryce has been running his mouth recently. I love Josh Emmett, but at 40 years old, unfortunately, I think the UFC has kind of waited him out. And he went to a decision with Ilia Topuria, which frankly, you can't not give him credit for that. Everybody Ilia has fought has absolutely slaughtered this man. I'm sorry, Ilia's slaughtered legends, right? He's going out there and taking out guys like Max Holloway and Volkanovski, but Josh Emmett was able to hang in there and go a full 25 minutes with him. It's impressive what he's been able to do. Jeremy Stephens was really the only guy that was able to sever this guy from his consciousness. He did give up a sub to Yair Rodriguez back in the day, but the only guy to actually knock him out was Jeremy Stephens. So Josh Emmett, extremely durable, extremely tough. He can wrestle. He's got power. He can volume. This guy checks every single box except he's damn old. Lerone Murphy, 15-0-1, 33 years old. this guy has been very, very solid in the IQ department recently. He can do everything very well. He's a big boy, big body here in this spot, very physically powerful, and a very good grappler. He's mixed in his wrestling a lot lately, and the Edson Barbosa fight was just a masterclass. He did everything in that fight. He was able to hit the takedowns. He was able to compete on the feet and the striking and stay defensive and just kind of drag this guy deep and wore him out. He's been getting decisions over these veterans, over these guys that are, near legendary status like Dan Ige, guys that you just have to respect, right? They're not going to be champions. They're not going to hold a belt, but they're guys that when you see their name on someone's record, you go, yeah, that's a good win. Got to tip the cap there on that one. This is a great fight, man. And I love Lerone Murphy. I've been cashing tickets on Lerone Murphy for a very, very long time. But I think plus 275 on a guy like Josh Emmett is just plain disrespectful. I think it always has been. Josh Emmett has never gotten his flowers. He's never been given his due. And he was a plus 185 underdog to Bryce Mitchell. Like, this guy always fights to the level of his competition in a good way and goes to war with some of the best names that you've ever seen and wins these fights. He's a very good underdog. He cashed as a plus 200 against Calvin Cater. It was a close competitive fight, but he won the damn thing. You go back in the day, he was an underdog to Mirsad Bektik before everybody figured out who was who. He won that fight and he knocked him out. I mean, like, Josh Emmett is a money printing machine at dog odds. So for me, this is dog or pass, but both these guys are my guys. Both these guys are guys that I have had success on. And I've noticed, Luke, whenever I get into that position, I tend to mess it up. When it's like, okay, I've done really well against both these guys on their own individual paths. And then when they meet each other, I somehow end up picking the wrong side, even though I feel like I've historically had a good read on both fighters. So I'm probably going to keep my hands in my pocket for this one. The age of Emmett really is kind of the big factor here that's kind of terrifying me in this spot. I think it's Lerone Murphy by decision. I think he's going to struggle to do the kind of damage it's going to take to finish Josh Emmett. Lerone is a 33-year-old prospect. It's a now or never type of fight for the guy, but he's been a bit of a decision machine. And I'm not sure he's got what it takes to beat a guy like Josh Emmett inside the distance, because Josh Emmett's a guy that doesn't really slow down. And he's very hard to, he's a very tough nut to crack. So I'll say Murphy by decision. Kind of hate it. Rooting for Josh Emmett. Dog or pass from a betting perspective. I'm going to say all the things in one fight. Luke, what do you make of this fight?
Honestly, I really don't have much to add. I kind of parrot your sentiments on pretty much everything. I do think the line's a bit wide. Josh Emmett is one of the biggest hitters in this division. He can knock anybody out. How wrong, or how bad can you really feel taking a shot at plus 2XX? But the problem is, he is 40 years old. He's coming off another year layoff. It's like, I've really tried to be more disciplined about not betting these guys that are 40, because it's just 40 or plus. It's just been a money pit for me over the years. Like, I try to make all these X's and O's arguments for them, but it's like, the reality is they're just fucking old. And like, and it just hasn't been a profitable angle for me over the years. And I do think Murphy, he's going to be the guy that's 7 years younger. I think he's more consistent to produce offense. Emmett doesn't really hold anybody down when he's wrestling, and the wrestling, honestly, overall is kind of weird because Emmett's only been shot on like 15 times. He obviously got guard subbed, or I think he got guard subbed by Yair. I think it was the triangle, right? But it's like Murphy has more upside there, but Emmett historically has also been kind of difficult to hold down. I just trust Murphy to produce more consistent offense over 25 minutes. I think he has a bit better cardio. Not that Emmett's cardio is bad or anything, but I think he's got a bit better cardio. I think he's the cleaner guy on the feet. So I think he gets the job done more often than not. But I mean, I don't see any value at minus 300. Like I said, I'd be more inclined to hold my nose and take a flyer on giving me 25 minutes for Josh Emmett to take the guy's head off if I was to bet anything. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's probably the more fun way to bet it too, just because then you can, root for violence. It's always a good time. Guys, that is UFC Vegas 105. We broke the whole dang thing down. We gave you 2 hours of full-on content, broke every fight down pretty in-depth actually on this one. It's one of those cards Luke and I were talking about backstage before we jumped on the podcast. The name value sucks. It doesn't look like it's all that exciting. couple of okay prospects, nothing to write home about. But these are always the fights that are bangers. We always end up loving these dumpster divey cards. There's volatile results on these cards. I think there's some opportunities to make some money here. We like a couple of spots. I do need to do a little bit of homework in a couple of places. Want to try to figure out what's up with Daniel Santos. Want to try to figure out what's going on with Rob Valentin. We check a couple of, and Cortavious Romious too. He got completely dark, by the way, on social media. I want to find like an interview with him or something, see where his head's at. But that's what we're going to do. We're looking at a couple spots. We like the underdog, Talita Alencar, not the underdog anymore, coin flip. And then dog of the week, Cortavious Romious. For now, that's it. That's all I got for now. But there's other opportunities on this card. Luke, thank you for joining me. Floor is yours, my man. If you've got anything going on, which I'm not sure how much content you're doing these days, but if you want to shout out anything or let the people know what they can do to support you or find you or anything, the floor is yours, my guy.
Yeah, dude, thanks for having me on. Like I said, it's been a while. We used to do these a little bit more consistently, but obviously the community's grown and you're bringing on a ton of great people every single week.
My guest list is very long now.
Yeah. So it was fun to get back on the horse and chop it up. Apologies for maybe not having like a ton of super passionate opinions. It's just a sketchy card. So yeah. I have to be honest that, there's a lot of things I'm like, I don't really know. Give out a couple plays. I will probably be clicking Gerald Mearshart here when we get off.
That's the one.
Or I might wait. I'm going to have to go look at some of the line movement because if money keeps coming in on Tavares, I don't want to jump the gun too quickly. But I will be adding GM3 to my ticket as well. But I guess just in terms of cheap plugs, sparringwithreality.com, that's where I put up all my bets, breakdowns over there. I also do some matchup analysis for Brett Apley and the Establish the Run team and their MMA DFS product. So if you're in the market for DFS stuff, be sure to check them out as well. Then just Twitter, social media, SWR_betting as well.
Okay. You love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you all very much for being here. Love you guys in the chat. If it wasn't for you guys, wouldn't be doing the dang thing. As always, I'll be back with the Total Takedown. We have the new unnamed show, which I need to pick a damn name for so I can make some graphics for it and make it look cool. But doing a prop show, that's a new thing. And then, of course, the undefeated post-weigh-in show on Friday. Get subscribed to the channel. Best MMA content in the game on this channel, and it's just going to get better moving forward. I just got to figure out how we're moving forward. I've got some things simmering in the background, but don't you worry. I'll pull my head out of my ass and I'll figure it out. Also, little bit of a change in the wins. 3-1 in the last 4. Hopefully, we turn it around for the year. Let's keep the good vibes rolling, you guys. Love you guys. Be good. Let's roll.